Good morning, colleagues. Thank you all for attending this meeting today. In the moment, I'm just waiting for our presenters, for all of them to sign in. I see Nico Fori. You've raised your hand. You wanted to say something, sir? Nico, Nico,
Morning.
your hand.
Morning.
Morning.
Well, yes, me. Morning. I just wanted to find out if I'm linked there with you.
Yes,
Okay, yeah,
we.
thanks. Then it's fine. Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you, Nico. The meeting will start now. I'm just waiting for Mr. Akil and Mr. Mampuru so we can
Well,
begin.
100%. Thanks, right? Thanks, Aman. All right.
Thank you, Nico.
All right, bye.
Morning again, colleagues. Let me just start by introducing myself to everyone. My name is Zama. I'm the education officer here in Sakap. I would like to thank everyone for applying to write this May PPE. Uh, we've done most of the application. I think the numbers are looking okay at the moment. Just to let everyone know, if you know of anyone who would like to apply. I think I was talking to Mr. Munetsi, my senior. The closing date has been extended for the preliminary applications. So if you know of anyone willing to apply, you can let them know that they can go through and apply. We will process their application. Just to talk about these PPE applications, how it was set up, uh, because the requirements for writing the PPE is that candidates must reach the required MTRs, which is for an apprentice and a candidate architectural draft person. They must have completed all the requirements, which is 36 months and the 400 units. And then for candidate architectural technologist, a candidate senior architectural technologist, and candidate architects, the minimum for them is 24 months and the 400 units. And then because SACAP has given the candidates a grace of a month, so if you as a candidate will be completing your MTRs by June of this year, you are given that grace to apply. So for those who are completing their applications by the end of June, or maybe they still have shortfalls in some of the categories, or they've submitted all the required MTRs, but their MTRs are not reviewed and signed off, maybe some of them or all of them. They are also given the chance to write, but we've been sending letters uh, to all those candidates who have shortfalls or have outstanding MTRs, but they will be completing them by end of June. So we've been sending letters for those candidates to sign them and then email them back to us so we can proceed with their applications and then generate the invoice and send it through to them. So those letters are just an agreement between the candidate saying they will be completing the outstanding MTRs, and then they send the letters to us so we can proceed with their applications. We've been receiving some of the letters, but I know some of the candidates have not returned the letters. And to some of the candidates, we haven't yet sent the letters through to them. But I will be sending all of the letters by end of next week. Because at this moment, I've processed all the application I have received thus far. Uh, I've done all of them. And then next week, I'll be sending letters to all those candidates who have maybe outstanding MTRs, or they need to have their MTRs signed off by their mentors so we can proceed and then send them the invoices. I'll be doing that beginning of next week from Monday. I think I will be done with sending all the letters to all the candidates by end of next week. But if there are any candidates who haven't received their invoices, who have not received their letters, please feel free to send an email to me. I believe you do have my email address. I will share it with you if you don't have it. If there's any questions you would like to ask, you can type your questions in the chat box. Then I will be attending to them throughout this meeting as we proceed. Uh, if there are any questions, we'll be taking them throughout the meeting. And then I see Mr. Akil is already here. I think both my presenters are here today. So I think I will give them now a chance to begin and say something, and then we can proceed with the meeting. Okay, just a moment. I see Courtney Buckley. I see you have your hand up. You can come through. Courtney. Okay. Courtney, do you have something to say? Okay, no, it's fine. Mr. Akil, you can come through, my good sir.
Zama, how's it? Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, Akil. How are you, my sir?
I'm good, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay, Akil. We can begin, sir.
Zama, just to mention to you, I don't have permissions to share here, and so and I don't have permissions to change a few things. I think we should, while you're getting that sorted, maybe I'll start with the proceedings for this morning. Want to check that out for me, Zama?
Yes, no, let me do that now, sir.
Okay, cool. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Today is the 18th of April, day one of our PPE preparations. It's myself and Linda Mampuru going to be talking this morning, and we are going to be taking you through what is your, hopefully, for many of you, your first PPE preparation workshop. If it's not your first and it's your second or your third, hopefully we'll be able to get you through this time round. So this morning, we have an agenda for the first hour. Linda and myself are going to be discussing the infrastructure and the structure and the direction that the papers should have been moving in. In the second hour, we'll talk a little bit more about a research-based task assignment. And in the last hour, we're going to attempt to try to clarify any confusion that there may be. But we will still at that time continue talking about the research task-led brief. But towards the end, we'll take some questions and answers. We're going to be together for 3 hours, so hopefully you're going to get some coffee and some cake or something else to eat this morning. And Linda, check in if you're there, sir. Are you well? Are you okay? While we're getting Linda there, want to check Zama, how's it going on your side?
I'm okay. I'm okay, Akil. I'm trying to give you that access now. Just give me a moment.
Okay, fantastic. So while everybody's getting some of their tea and coffee and whatnot ready, just to mention that this is an extension of 4 previous PPE prep workshops that have been conducted. Today, you're going to have a look at my screen and you will see a research task-led assignment that we'll be sharing. And towards the end of it, you'll see that we have roughly about 4 series or 4 episodes, 4 sessions, 4 videos from a series of lectures we've been doing. This commenced around about 2024. In fact, it did actually, the planning for it started in 2023. But in 2024 and 2025, you will see that myself, Linda, Yasmin, Louis, a number of us had been presenting workshops. And it was part of a plan for us to have an entire series that you could refer to when you are preparing for the workshop. Some of you have seen the series already. Some of you have only seen 1 or 2 videos in the series. And some of you have seen the series too many times. So what I'm going to do is I will share my screen and you'll have a look at the links to those, but we're also going to send you some documents a bit later on. The documents that we're going to be sharing with you are going to be accessed via a link. You'll be able to check it out yourself, but they will include today's brief, and they will also include links to other materials, such as presentations from the prior sessions. All of those were created with the aim of becoming a resource pool for you to use. Now, I'm very happy to mention that all of it is free, so there's nothing you have to pay for. And really, strictly speaking, if you follow the free materials, you should be in a good place to pass the examination. So, with that being said, I'm going to mention that we'll give everybody roughly a few more minutes to get themselves together before we commence on today's session. The time is now 8:14 on my side. In about 5 minutes' time, when I do commence with my presentation, what I'd hope for you to do is the following. Today, Linda and I are going to be having a conversation about our experience in the PPE team. We're going to be talking about some of the things that we noted that were important for us to look at. We're going to discuss how when we met with examiners in previous examinations, what were the thoughts and what is the thinking around the paper. And we're also going to mention later on the following. We're going to be discussing, okay, how some of the world and how it's changed has led to the way the examination has been changed. And also, moreover, how has that attempted to prepare you beyond the PPE? Today's topic and the theme for today's session is called Beyond Preparation. So we're not just focusing on the PPE, we're focusing on the PPE as a preparation mechanism for the future of your career or for the future of whatever it is you intend to do in your life beyond the PPE. So Linda and I will be having discussions on this. What I'd like you to do is listen into what we have to say, because we're sharing insights on what we understand of how the examination had been set previously. And we're also sharing insights on how the infrastructure and the foundation was created for the examinations that will be created in future. So with that being said, I'm going to try again. Linda, you with me? I think Zama, what we're looking for on Linda's side is also to give him the same accesses, but maybe it might just be an unmute thing. Maybe Linda might be struggling to unmute. Checking. 1, 2, 3. Zama, Linda.
Yes, Aki.
Want to
I
try
hear you.
maybe try unmuting Linda. Maybe he's struggling to unmute.
Okay.
It's a fantastic Saturday. As if anyone knows though, it's flipping freezing in Cape Town, man. There's snow on the Matroosberg Mountains, and from yesterday to today, I have like 3 or 4 layers of clothing on. And this change in weather conditions definitely exposes that my building is not very well insulated, my home where I'm living. Um, but those are part of the things that we discuss in architecture, strangely. Right? Things like how you feel inside a room and whether there's enough insulation and whether the construction type was correct. What an interesting world we live in. I'm going to give Linda a little bit of an opportunity when we open up for him to introduce himself and then for me to reintroduce myself. Linda, with me?
Yes, Akil, can you hear me?
Hey, Linda, how's it? I'm well. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, man.
Are you very nice and clear, man? Linda, I never
Yes.
actually, we've been talking so long, and I didn't even ask you where you based at this moment.
Um, okay, that's a very open-ended question. I'm definitely on Earth.
Fantastic. It's good to hear that. It's very good.
Yeah,
So you're well-rounded.
thank you so much, and my apologies that I struggle to get my audio settings sorted out, but thank you very much for yeah, the fact that I'm able to now be accessible. Yes. So I'm completely on board, and thank you very much for the introduction, Akil. And my warm welcome to everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to share with you. Um, Akil, as Akil has actually just mentioned, I think with previous, I think presentations we were just discussing yesterday, that in as much as we've presented about the paper and what are the kinds of things to anticipate. We are hoping that this time around, there will be more of an engagement or interaction with the candidates. And what we were saying is that, guys, please, there isn't such a thing as a stupid question or a dumb question. Because if you ask that question, you might actually be helping someone else. So we're hoping that you guys will not be shy to field any questions to ourselves, and hopefully we have answers to those questions. But yeah, thank you very much for that.
Linda, thanks, man,
Yeah.
for setting some of the tone there. Linda, in our discussions yesterday, you and I we spoke about a few things, and in fact, we were discussing this for a while now. But you and I go back a while ago. We actually go back for a while in our working together in the PPE, and in the time we were working together, the things that you
Yeah.
and I were discussing and the things we were looking forward to were really understanding our landscape at the moment and how the PPE examination is a reflection of that. Um, some of the things that we had discussed is low compensation or reward or return on investment. Other things were dangerous practices on site, like the building collapses that occurred. Linda,
Mm,
in your and my time that we spent together, there's been subsequently many more buildings that have collapsed, and yourself in the role that you're in,
yeah.
maybe you'd like
Yes.
to just give the audience some insight into why you and I are doing the session and not somebody else, based on your background and experience.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you very much, Akil. So, as Akil has mentioned already, I think the nice thing with your this current exam is that even the previous one is that you've got Akil who's very well versed with what is happening in the private sector, and then you've got myself who sits within government as chief architect at the National Department of Public Works. So I think the candidates, those of you that follow current affairs, you've seen the Minister McPherson, who's been globetrotting around the country whenever there's a collapsed building or there's a fire. You all know about the Parliament building that was on fire as well, which is a project that we're currently busy with. So the importance of what I'm saying now is that because I sit within government, we obviously need to test your ability as candidates in understanding legislative requirements and compliance within the space of architecture, because that lies at the heart of why we are constantly having problems currently with collapsing building and fires and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, the space that we're in is such that if you make a mistake today on a project, the consequences might only be realized in 10 years, 20 years' time. So that is why it becomes even more important that we understand the repercussions of the decisions that we make and that there's a deep understanding of the legislative requirements. So yeah, I think hopefully that is clear. I just want to emphasize that importance, Akil. So we'll cover a little bit of that in our presentation in terms of, the legislative requirements, things that are sometimes lesser known by those of you that have just recently graduated. Thank you very much.
100% get where you're coming from, Linda. I'm hoping that in this time that we're going to spend together with the candidates, that they'll be able to see the examination should not be something that's solely based on studying, but based on potentially real world circumstances and repercussions. And so, what I hope in the next, let's say within the next hour or so, everyone will get to see that clearly in the way that we are going to have this discussion. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys now, and in sharing my screen with everyone, you're going to see a few of the documents we'll be looking through today. I'd like to have you familiarize yourself with it. Linda, you're just going to let me know if you can see my screen and if it's clear.
I can see it, Akil. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you very much, Linda. So today, on the first major difference to any prior workshops is that we have already covered the majority of the content and the direction that the examination in future is going towards. And what we're seeing here at this moment in time is that the PPE content that's available on the internet, freely available, whether it's from SACAP's website or whether it's from a place like my organization, An Architect, or whether it's from other organizations that are posting free content. There's a lot of content available. This was not the case, say, 5 years ago. And it was really the vision that the PPE team at SACAP had and the extended auxiliary members to that provided a lot of the framework that you are seeing today. So when you are seeing the PPE 2026 study guidelines, the ones that were sent by Zama, or you are seeing some of the videos uploaded on SACAP's YouTube channel, or you are seeing some of the additional resources I'll share with you today, it's because of the vision of many people that decided that content should be accessible to everyone. And it's why you don't have to pay for access to a lot of the content. However, if you do wish to see more than what is being shown. There are other places you can get it from. So if you attend any of the voluntary association preparatory workshops, they will also provide you with a lot of content. But the content that we are sharing with you today was specifically prepared by the people that were on the PPE examination team, which means when it comes to credibility of material, highest on the list is that which is issued by SACAP. Secondary on the list will be that which is issued by a voluntary association. And third on the list will be something that is issued by any party or organization outside of that. And so everything that you are seeing today is stuff contained within the SACAP ecosystem. However, there will be times where I will share with you resources out of the ecosystem. For example, you might see something that's on YouTube that refers to a podcast that's important to listen to. Or you might see resources that's important to listen to or to watch that is on YouTube. Now, these are not necessarily from SACAP's websites, but they are from places that will aid you in your understanding. We'll talk about that later on today. I'm going to also specifically have a look in the guide section and tell you what that looks like. Next, I'm going to share my screen on what we had initially started in the May 2025 presentations. And in the May 2025 presentations for day one, we spoke about paper one. We are no longer doing paper one and paper two on the first day or second day. We are going to be talking about the exam in its entirety. And so, although you might have noticed we have 2 days, which is this Saturday and next Saturday, it doesn't mean one day is formally dedicated for paper one and formally dedicated for paper two. We're discussing both examinations on both days. And of course, that means required attendance if you'd like to be part of this and benefit as much as you can. Required attendance for both days. So you'll see on my screen that artificial intelligence screen is sharing. And we are going to be talking about that today. So my background is specifically in architecture and the technologies around it. And in my current role as the co-founder of the Institute of Building Design, which is a premium CPD offering from SAIBID, South African Institute of Building Design, a voluntary association, it is my responsibility to lead the machine learning and artificial intelligence in the built environment efforts towards aiding professionals in upskilling. And so upskilling or reskilling, whatever it is that you'd like to call it, my specialty lies at this moment in the use of artificial intelligence. I must note to you, and I'll talk about it and have my rant with Linda just now, that not only is it emerging technologies that we'll be talking about, but we'll also be talking about the financial landscape. And so my background in running various departments and being responsible for operations at various institutions and organizations will also come into play there. But perhaps the thing that will most intrigue you, and maybe you'll be interested in knowing, is that I have formally studied artificial intelligence and I have also informally studied it. And so the information I'll be sharing with you here is accurate information. And it's information that I hope will be of benefit to you. Next, we'll be looking at SACAP's website. Now, many of you may or may not know that on SACAP's website, if you look at the top right corner of the tabs on the top, you'll see that under publications, there are annual reports, newsletters, documents, press releases, council strategy, annual performance. All of these documents will be helpful to you, but in specific, if you click on documents, you will see that a whole lot of documents open up, and in specific, you'll see the SACAP PPE 2026 guideline here. We'll be looking at the SACAP 2026 guideline today as well, and we'll be using it to help us to ground some of the knowledge we'll be talking about. So with that being said, we are now exactly at 8:30. Linda, I'm going to stop sharing my screen very quickly, and what I'd like yourself and myself to maybe just help the candidates through is understanding the difference between the exam now and the examination that maybe yourself and myself wrote some time ago. Linda, what was the examination like for you when you wrote the PPE?
Yes, thank you very much, Akil. So when I wrote the exam, and I won't say how many years ago, because that might reveal my age.
No.
It was it was obviously way before the so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution, It was way before AI and so on. So the focus was more on office practice and more particularly, um, understanding of not even the business side of things, but compliance in terms of administrative matters. So I think what is happening currently um, globally is influencing in which the direction in which we are going. So obviously, with the assistance of Akil, there's been an introduction of a what you call AI. What we are particularly concerned about is also the business side of things. How do we adapt to the current economic climate globally? Because we need to start take things from a global point of view. Because when you pass this exam, um, remember that the qualifications that you have currently are validated as per the Act, the SACEP Act, right? And we have agreements with international bodies and charters with international bodies, like RIBA, for instance, who recognize this qualification. So, in your preparation for the exam, there needs to be an understanding of how to understand the global economic climate and how it affects us locally. So those are some of the elements that have been infused into the exam. So if you look at, the questions that, or even the discussions that we'll be having today and next Saturday, we'll be looking at the entire value chain of architecture when we talk to aspects of compliance. And as candidates, you will need to demonstrate your understanding of the entire value chain, even as much as we will not be dealing with technical issues where we test your ability in terms of design. But we'll still be testing that ability from a compliance point of view. And I think that will be demonstrated with the discussions and the questions that we'll be asking. Um, so your understanding of the national uh, building regulations, the interpretation thereof, your understanding of the JBCC, um, how to interpolate or interpret data from Stats SA, for instance. Things like preambles. What are preambles? The interpretation thereof. The APA Act number 44 of 2000, CIDB documents, PROXA documents, architects clients agreements, SABS sends 10400 Part XA, and the document that falls under the domain of public works, the Infrastructure Development Act number 23 of 2014. So what will be very helpful for the candidates, Akil, is to understand that when a question is actually pitched at them, what is the source documents that I need to go to in order to answer a particular question? And that is more important. That will be particularly important for paper two, because paper two is open book. So yes, I think that's that covers, I think, maybe the differentiator between the current exams and some of the exams we've had before. Uh, but long and short is the questions that will be fielded are going to be multi-layered in nature. So the nice thing is that if a question is out of, let's say, 12 candidates, um, the likelihood is that even if you don't have all the answers for that particular question, you should at least earn 50 points for that particular question. And I think just to reinforce, you guys in most cases will already have the answers without having to refer to a particular document. So yes, I hope that answers the question, Akil and
Yeah, it
candidates.
definitely does, Linda. And
Yeah,
something you mentioned that was quite cool, or that was really important, is source documents. So
yeah.
for the conversation here, everyone, what we're going to hope your attitudes for the next few minutes are going to be is that you listen into what Linda and I are talking about, because Linda and I had been on the preparation team before, and we also had chatted to the examiners who had set the papers previously, irrespective of which one of it, paper one or paper two. We are aware in the prior sessions what was the thinking that went on. And so Linda and I are going to give you an insight that you otherwise wouldn't have had. Now, Linda and I are going to also mention now, we don't know what is in this paper, and that is how this one goes. We haven't set this paper. We don't have any special information about this paper other than we were part of forming the infrastructure of how the papers are going forward. So that means ultimately not many people here will be able to, or not many people generally, will be able to give you the direction that we are giving you. So we are giving you an overview and an insight of the thinking that you need to have. And the thinking is what will be able to guide you and help you to pass the examination. It is an attitude and a method of attempting to pass this exam that we are looking for, and that, or rather that the examination team is looking for. Your thinking is exceptionally important. And so it's more important that you follow through the method of thinking than it is that you say, okay, cool, I know the answer to this. It's a method of thinking as a professional that you get marked on. Not necessarily do I have the correct answer, although the correct answer is what you're going for. So I'm going to share my screen with you all now, and I'm going to talk you through, in sharing the screen, I'm going to talk you through one of our prior presentations, just so you can have a little bit of an understanding of where it is you're coming from. Linda, can you see my screen?
I can, Akil. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks, Linda. I'm going to make it a slideshow. Tell me if you can still see it. Can you still see it?
I can see it, yes.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. So some of the information is from previous webinars that we've hosted. And you can see from the previous webinars, we've covered a lot of content. And in fact, this content that you are seeing here is what had come out in great detail in some of the prior papers. In fact, for example, if you maybe missed some of the emerging technologies parts in one paper, you probably might have had it in another. And so it's not guaranteed that everything will come out all at once, but one of these topics probably will come out at some stage in one of the papers. So just to talk you through, we mentioned that there was a strategy the last time for the professional practice exam. The strategy is understand the PPE exam is split into two papers. And as Linda mentioned, in his time, paper one, or just the paper itself, was largely focused on legislative components and following contractual components in architecture. Because at the time, the world was a different place. And if you didn't know, roughly about 10 to 15 years ago, we didn't have as many categories of registration as we have now. Those are something new. And because they were new, they came out in the examination. So if you have access to a 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014 paper, you will start to see the introduction of these new categories of registration. And so the paper is evolving with the time. Something important that also occurred is when Linda and I were having a look at the understanding and the structure of the examination. It was based on not only recent events, but also international events that had occurred. So whether it was the global economy, or whether it was some specific grand narrative that was occurring, these are things that would feature in the paper. And so part of it is that the paper needs to be relevant to all of the players in industry. And so the paper that you'll be getting is probably one of the most up-to-date papers you will have written in your lifetime. So what you're seeing on my screen here is the PPE examination is split into that paper one and paper two, where paper two is more focused, not that it's only about that, but it's more focused on all of the contractual information around constructing a building. And so derived from there, where does all of that come from? What are the things that are in it? each of these steps that you are seeing, which we are going to call for the sake of today's session, the 7 steps towards becoming a professional, these are the steps that your topics in the examination are derived from, all the way from knowing where to study at high school to enrolling at an accredited learning site and to the end. Now, if you've listened to my lectures before, or you've listened to previous PPE presentations, or you are in one of the PPE preparation groups like the one run by Lizelle Jackson, you'll know that this is something that you should know by heart. This is a thing you should commit to memory. And I'm going to show it to you when we're talking about the research-led task earlier today, where this is so important that it is non-negotiable, that if someone had to ask you in the examination, what are the 7 steps, you should list it like you are seeing it, obviously in a bit more detail, because that's what the paper is coming from. We call this derivation. You're deriving the paper. Zam, I just want to mention that we have some muting issues occurring. The muting issues is that some people are unmuting themselves. I'm just mentioning, Zama, maybe just try and resolve that if you're able to. The next thing that's also mentioned here is the following. When we're looking at learning approach, you should memorize some things because that's just common knowledge. It's knowledge that you should have when you're discussing with peers. You can see here what's mentioned for memorization. In some of it, you need to know how to calculate, for example, professional fees and payment certificates. And then there are things that you need to understand. And so from the things that have occurred and all of the events that have occurred, you have to understand what it is that it happened in this world, how is that related to your field, and how do you act as a professional meaning someone that complies to the law. The examination is not about competence in design or competence in construction or competence in history. That you already have. What we're looking at is compliance. Can you comply with the law? Next, we're going to have a look at what you need to watch and what you need to look through. These are all of the places where you can get information from. You should follow these places to get information about the examination, whatever SACAP has posted, and make sure that you also inquire with your resources, what's available. Now, this examination, if you have a look at general papers and the structure, you see that there's definitions, calculations, multiple choice, true and false. These are what was generally in past papers and the structure for them. It is generally methods to assess what you know. I'm not going to go into great detail about this, but so you understand, in education or in professional development, there are things you need to know, and then there has to be an evidence which shows it. In order to extract that evidence from you, there must be a method. These are the methods. Do you know definitions? Can you use multiple choice, true and false? These are methods of extracting that information. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and we are going to start to look at a little bit more detail on what is in the 2026 guide that has been shared with you. All of this information you can get from SACAP's YouTube page, because there are lectures that have all of this. We will also be sending you a link with all of these previous slides. Again, in the hierarchy of information that's sent to you, everything from SACAP that is sent by SACAP. So not what's advertised on the CPD space, not what other VAs are offering, not what anyone's opinions are on anything that so happens to be on LinkedIn. We're saying officially issued by SACAP, that is part of SACAP's official PPE preparation workshop webinars. That is paramount. That is the materials that you should be using first. And then you use whatever else it is that has been made available to you or that you have. That is the hierarchy and authority of information that is coming through. All right. This is the 2026 guideline. Linda, can you see it here? Just checking if we still got Linda. Linda, if you are there, you're going to unmute yourself. Zama, can you see it here?
Yes, I can see it fine, Akin.
Thank you, Zama. If you didn't know, this is an editable document, or rather, sorry, it is a interactive document. If you have a look here and you hover over to each of the topics in this guideline, you'll be able to click on it and it'll take you through to a specific section. If you have a look at this page, first page, number 1, it tells you about the overview of the exam session. The first thing is deriving a profession. And in deriving a profession, what we talk about is a first principles approach. First principles means that you are looking at knowns and what you could consider as absolute truths and deriving logic and sensibilities from it. And so we are trying to explain, where does everything in the field come from? Why does it exist? That you should understand for the examination, and not just attempting to study for the exam without having full context, because that means when a question changes or the method of questioning changes, you're going to be lost because you are unable to know where things come from. It's exceptionally important that you know this, because then you are also able to influence, when you get to a specific stage, how regulation, policy, and even if you had to be on the SACA PPE examination team, how the examination goes. So it's important you understand how to derive a profession. Looking through all of this, the first part explains the examination to you and how it works. The second part tells you a bit more about your competencies in the IDOW. And the third part talks about professional fees guideline. This has all been discussed in prior presentations, so we're not going to be talking about it now. We are going to be talking specifically about how, from this information, you could potentially be questioned. Next, you'll see that we have paper 2 and the focus on the final step of the professional learning journey. You'll also see here a lot about the JBCC, and just prior to that, on the top of my screen, you'll see things about SANS. These are things you should know in general. And now you might be saying, oh, Akil, the pressure is mounting. I'm getting a lot of information. It's a lot for me to handle. Okay, cool. You need to be able to emotionally regulate yourself to see beyond the stress and see what it is that is being asked of you. That's something we actually do in the sessions with Lizelle Jackson that I occasionally feature on, where we talk about the candidates' mental states. They need to be able to regulate themselves, because it's never that candidates are incompetent or don't know what's in the exam. It's the fear of failure or anxiety that overcomes them, that causes them to fail. I was lecturing at a private school of architecture yesterday, and one of the schools of architecture that I had lectured at, it was something that I had discussed with the students as well. It's never that you fail because you don't know a thing. Generally speaking, especially if you've prepared, it's usually the anxiety that overcomes you. And so dealing with that is part of being a professional. You can't just go and say whatever you want to a client, and you can't just, in an emotional outburst, express your anger at a contractor for whatever thing has happened. It's part of being a professional, meaning that you have integrity and skill and due diligence, and you're able to hold yourself in a way that has dignity. So here's something that many people may or may not know, but there is a supplementary section in the book. And you'll see that supplementary section in the book talks about some of these new areas. Now, everything you're seeing prior to this is part of the profession practice examination, and was part also of some of the older versions of the profession practice examination. But here, the supplementary section of the book is helping candidates understand, here are new sections that are going to become a very fundamental part of the paper going forward. One of them is project management. The next is the business of architecture. And the last here that you see is interpreting statistical data. And so in here, what you'll notice is that part of the business of architecture is taking new technologies on. And part of interpreting statistical data is also using technology to interpret it. So although technology is not explicitly mentioned here, it is definitely part of this paper. And technology as a means to solve problems. Many people confuse technology with BIM or AI or computational design or LiDAR scanning. That is a superficial understanding of technology. You don't really know what technology is if you think that is what technology is, if you think that it's reduced to those segments and components. Technology as a means to enable us to solve problems is what humans have been doing throughout time. A car is a form of technology, a spoon is a form of technology. Anyone that has done their higher education properly in architecture will know that technology is not just reduced to digital technologies. Even architecture technology as a field of study, the word technology there talks about how things meet, the construction and assembly of buildings. So technology is not about BIM. Technology is methods to solve problems. That's an important distinction that must be made. Lastly, in this guide, you'll see that there's, in the beginning, methods to help you adjust yourself so that you prepare for it well. And you'll see exactly what I mentioned to you. For example, first principles thinking is what this book is based on. So it shows you how things are derived and how to best understand it. Then you also see here that moving through, it's important for candidates to stay aware and updated on relevant happenings locally and globally. That's exceptionally important for you to know. And that is what really assesses your competence as a professional. Can you respond to a situation in the required manner? Now, if you can hear the tone of my voice, I'm pretty chill this morning. And I'm talking to you in a very chill manner because now I'm telling you all administrative things. Just now, Linda and I are going to go into full-on podcast style. And we're going to be discussing what it is that we have set up for you in this beyond the preparation for the PPE brief and how it's going to attempt to prepare you. So in the next 10 minutes, we'll be starting that. Just so you can go through this booklet. This is what I was talking about earlier. These are the 7 steps. It's exceptionally important that you know where your content in the examination comes from. This is and should be part of your memorization, because you can see here that for each of the steps, there are the topics that come in the exam. The topics that you are seeing here is what you see in your PPE syllabus. And when you look at your PPE syllabus, these topics are not listed in this order. They're not there to help you make sense of it. They're there to tell you in a very categorical sense, here is what you need to study, here's the topics, go and study it. But here we are providing meaning to you. We're telling you that all of these topics come from these steps. And if you understand that, you'll be able to better negotiate, better navigate all of the ways around accessing information about the examination. Next, we go through it. You'll see that there's very distinctive pathways and national qualification framework guidelines on what you can be once you have finished a specific qualification. It's important for you to know that, and important for you to know that there are ways around this. For example, if you have a look at the mechanism of RPL, recognition of prior learning, or if you look at special exemption, or if you look at various different methods that SACAP has employed to assist professionals in entering the profession, like the apprenticeship program. These are all ways that candidates can aid themselves in upskilling and moving through the system, so that higher education is not a barrier, but it is just another method of attempting to achieve your goal of becoming a professional. So you can have a look at all of this yourself, but it was important that I mentioned this to you, that this is what should be committed to memory by everyone, because this is what your paper is based on. It's definitely going to help you navigate all of the questions and problems to come. It is now 8:53. At 9 o'clock, we are going to commence with the brief, and I'm going to be sharing it on my screen. Zama will be sharing a link to that brief, and you can have a look at it after the discussion. This is being recorded, but we don't know if it's going to be made available to everyone, because sometimes after recordings, the files do get corrupt. But the intention is that we do publish this on SACAP's YouTube channel, unless otherwise stated. So if it gets corrupted, the video, you will still have access to these links. But the discussion today is primarily for those who are attending these sessions. And of course, that hopefully should be of great benefit to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to check with Zama very quickly. Zama, you doing well on your side? How's it on the administrative part? I see there's some questions potentially coming in.
Yes, no, I'm okay, Akil. I think I've managed to fix some of the things because the candidates were disabled from the chat box, but now everyone is fine and everyone is unmuted, is allowed to talk. So I think we will have a good session.
Very good. Zama, any standout issues, any fires that need to be put out?
No, at the moment everything looks fine, Akil. It's just some of the questions in the chat box. I think they are directed to you because they are more on the study guide and everything. On the science, I think you are best suited to ask to respond to them. Like this one is asking, please note in this 2026 guide, the dimensions of a disabled toilet has not been updated to be in accordance with the SANS 10400.
Oh,
So,
fantastic. Those are things we'll address then, Zama.
yeah.
in the session. I see that is from Tian Hatting, and there's also other more administrative questions. So in the next 5 minutes, everyone, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to prepare yourselves for what's coming up, get your notes out, get everything ready. While you're preparing for that, Linda, are you still with us? Linda, I think you are on mute there, but I know you're still there. um, Maybe Zama, you can aid Linda in unmuting there, unless it's a computer setting. While everyone's getting ready, people, we are just having a small intermission here while everyone's getting ready until 9, where we'll share a screen. Linda, you have you left Earth and are you in space now? Is that what you were suggesting in the beginning? I see you. Oh, there's it. Linda
I'm
Linda
with
is an
you.
optimist
I'm
number
just sorting
4.
out my connectivity issues, but I'm with you.
Oh, okay. No. Great. No. Linda, Lina, you know, Artemis had just recently occurred, right? You know, there's some shots from
Yeah,
moon and from the moon and whatnot. Lina, when you saw
yeah.
those images, I don't know how that made you feel, but what were your initial reactions?
You mean with the space mission?
Yeah, with any of the space missions, like, what was your take on it? Like, some people were asking, why should we have done it? But I understand, but you know, when I
Yeah.
see when I see some of the things that we accomplish as a species, as human beings, I'm quite in
Mm.
awe that we were able to achieve these heights, you know?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's fascinating stuff. It's fascinating stuff, Akil. And I think the fact that it's coinciding with the current socio-political and geopolitical issues is very interesting. That we've got some occurrence that's very divisive geopolitically, and then you've got another parallel event that is, that has global attention, that is acting as a unifier. For me, was important. And if you listen to look at the optics and what these guys were saying, they were sending a subliminal message of how greater we are unified than we are divided. And I hope that that message sank in, to a large extent to the leaders that are obviously actively involved in the geopolitics today. So yeah, it's very interesting. Apart from obviously the fact that it's a huge milestone that in more than 50 years, this has not been achieved. In itself is a huge milestone. But also to think of it, Akil, I mean,
Yeah.
that almost 58 years ago, we were
Yeah.
able to achieve the same thing with the technology at the time. For me, it's very amazing.
I know,
It's
right?
actually
It's crazy.
mind blowing. Yeah,
And
crazy.
without the connectivity, right? That we have now.
Without the connectivity, without the AI, without the apps, and all the technology, it's amazing.
It definitely is. And so, while we're mentioning this for everyone that's here, we are segueing into what is the next section, where we're actually going to be talking about technology as a method to solve problems in the field and how that is related to your responsible usage of it as a professional. Now, you might have seen in all of the other previous presentation workshops, cameras are on and you see me and you see everybody. But today, the focus is not on my animation, but the focus is on the content that we are discussing with you. And the hope is that you could potentially even just listen to this as you're going through in the car, traveling wherever it is that you need to go, so that you can hear what your attitudes towards the PPE need to be. And instead of studying for the PPE, live and enact the way that you should be enacting or behaving all the time as a professional. Linda, I am seeing that the time is 9. I think we should start sharing that brief now. Hey, I'll start sharing it.
Yes, no problem.
I think it's about time. All right. Lina, just tell me if you can see the screen of mine. think you should be able to. Hopefully so.
I can. Sorry about
Okay,
that.
okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you. People, having a look here, what you can see at this moment is at 9 o'clock, we are now talking about Beyond Preparation. That's the theme for our session today. It's called the official SACAP PPE Workshop 2026. Can you see hierarchy of information, right? It's official from SACAP. This is the stuff you listen to, right? It's from us, from the team that is working with SACAP, and we are sharing at this webinar information that is going to help you hopefully prepare for the exam. This is the first one. If you scroll through this document, you'll see that there's context, and the context really here in this segment talks about how the PPE is led now by Linda and myself. And the aim is to help you better prepare for the examination, despite all the thousands of resources you might have available to you. There's Linda and I looking cool, chilling in all of our glory. And we are now working through what Linda and I are doing for the first time in PPE history, PPE history, a case-based preparatory workshop. Today is led by me, and I'll be taking you through today's brief. You will have 1 week, so from now till the next, to attempt to go through the questions and the case study scenarios. Again, generally speaking, across various different professions, professional practice examinations are attempting to test compliance with the law when you are in new circumstances based on knowledge you have, skill you have, experience you have, and fundamentally the regulations that are available. And so we are here attempting to provide that for you for the first time. The case-based preparatory workshop, as you can see here, is a workshop that is research-led and is a method of preparation which encourages professionals to learn by doing, not by solely studying. That doesn't mean you shouldn't study. It means that for those who are more practically inclined, or those who need to understand the context around which they are studying, they will be able to engage with the content that's available, the workshops, the guidelines, everything else. They'll be able to engage with this stuff to help get a better understanding of what the examination is really testing. So it's giving live scenarios that you should go and research, enact, do, complete, that will help you in your preparation. So if you only started studying for the PPE examination today, this is a really good opportunity for you to make use. We have this week and next week, we will be talking you through specific scenarios and case-based scenarios. So things that could potentially be implemented in your firm to help you not only understand what the PPE is about, but also improve the quality of working culture at your firm or the way that you operate as a business. So you'll see here the case-based research work is intended to provide context and support thinking, which aims to build confidence in candidates writing an examination. But more than that, you can see in long-term careers, that's pretty important because it's about beyond the PPE. If you are writing the PPE only for the sake of writing it, you're very welcome to do that, but you're not really getting the full benefit of what it means to be a professional. Often the case is, as I was mentioning to the students yesterday, when I lectured prior to this, I have some students going out into industry. And when they come back, they're like, Akil, do you know what we did? And I'm like, yes, what did you do? And they're like, we did computational design. I'm like, wow. And they're like, did you know Dynamo exists in Revit and you can do it? And I'll be like, of course I knew that. I set the paper. Didn't you write an examination? You were supposed to have passed it. And so many of the time, when I'm talking to students, they don't realize that the thing they are studying for actually has an impact and meaning in their career. They study for the sake of passing an examination, not for the sake of transforming themselves. And so hopefully you'll be able to gather that in this examination, you should have been transformed by the time you complete it. The outcome. The case-based assignments are directional and non-prescriptive. What does that mean? That means that they are not telling you what is coming out in the paper. These are not questions that will feature in the paper exactly as is. It's suggesting to you that these are ways that will help you to think about your examination and potentially prepare you to the best of your ability to answer questions you might have never seen ever in your life before. So what we're talking about is a better method of preparation to deal with uncertainty and things you don't know. If you look at the questions, you'll see they are not set up like examination questions. They are set up to help you learn differently and better prepare for the examination. Because Linda and myself were part of the team setting up previous infrastructure and presentations on the examination. We have a fairly good idea of what is expected of a candidate when it comes to being prepared, the readiness for the workshops. We don't know what is in the paper. We have not seen the paper, and we have not been part of this team that has set the paper. What we do know very well, though, is all of the circumstances around which the questions are created and what are the ways in which examiners expect you to think. So what you can see here is there's a suggestion of an alternate method to assist candidates in preparing for the examination. And by completing the objectives, candidates will gain a more balanced perspective on how to integrate the experience with the regulatory and legislative compliance. Just to talk here very quickly, how to approach using this aid for research tasks. On my screen, you can see it says this aid is intended to be used in conjunction with the following resources respectively. This is the hierarchy of information you should be following when preparing for SACAP's PPE examination. You can see there's a little star, an asterisk on resources. And if you look at the bottom, it says all the resources we are mentioning are freely available. It should not be that you cannot afford a resource and that is the reason why you failed the examination. Then we are not doing our jobs as people in positions of in possession rather of resources. For example, here in Linda and myself preparing this, we're not doing our job if we're going to have to make you pay for all of this information. Information is freely available. The method to engage with it, yes, possibly you could pay for, like going for a workshop or paying a platform to use their systems. That is understandable. But information and knowledge is free, especially in an age where artificial intelligence can generate synthetic data. Information will become more and more freely available. Knowledge has always been free. That's why libraries are in existence. You don't pay to borrow a book from a library. And so zooming in here, the aid is intended to be used in conjunction with these resources. First on the list of hierarchy, the most official document that you should be following is the SACAP guidelines, the PPE ones that are created, this document that you see here, the 2024, 2025 one, 2026 one. These have been updated for specific reasons with specific things. The next that is in the hierarchy of information you should follow is the PPE webinars from 2024 and 2025. These webinars were specifically created to become a body of knowledge which you will learn from, right? They are meant to be a resource on YouTube with its slides that will help you best prepare for the exam. It's not comprehensive, but it is very, very extensive and covers a lot that will aid you. Next is the actual presentation, so the slides itself from the 2024 and 2025 webinars, the national gazettes that are available. You'll see this on SACAP's page as well. The SACAP board notices, the national building regulations, and even versions of the SANS has been made available on SACAP's website. You can check it out. And then finally, the Why Professional Practice ebook. So as you're seeing here, SACAP's official professional practice guide that's been submitted, then, or that everyone should have, the 2026 one, the guideline, then national documentation, so like board notices and gazettes, and then the Why Professional Practice ebook. Because many of the diagrams and the content that is featured in this ebook has made its way into some of the papers and has made its way into the work that we are presenting to you. The reason that these documents are freely available to you is so that you can have access whenever you need it when you are studying and not have to wait behind a paywall for it. I'm mentioning this again because it's really important that you do not need to pay for resources to pass this examination. This is the list and the hierarchy on which this research task is based on, and also the list and the hierarchy of information which will help you most definitely pass the examination. Everything else that you might have is nice to have because it'll give you confidence and support. But right now, this is what you need. Here is the method when you are conducting these research tasks. So each section begins with a contextual paragraph and therefore follows into a research-based question. The method is as follows. Number 1 on the method, locate along the 7 steps toward becoming a professional. Where is it that the research task is positioned? I must stress this importance. You do not start off any research task or even any question in the examination paper with not knowing where is it in the 7 steps. Because in the 7 steps, it will help you understand what legislation, what documentation am I referring to. Because if you're at a high school level, there's no ways you're going to refer to the JBCC or the Architectural Professionals Act number 44 of 2000. You don't even know what that stuff is. And so it's important that you know if there's a question about high school, you answer it with the resources that are available to you that tell you about high school questions. Next, locate the topics which correlate to the segment. So if you're at step number 2 of the segment, which talks about enrolling at an accredited learning site, then know, okay, these are all the topics associated with it. It'll be something like accredited program or something that'll talk about the 10 competencies in architecture, so on and so forth. Next, after you've done this, is research the topics from their respective resources. These resources I'm mentioning here, and whatever else SACAP has provided to you of resources. SACAP has sent you a PPE materials list. There's links there which give you access to a lot of what I'm mentioning. And these are the resources from which you start conducting your research. Next, conduct further research by inquiring with firms, peers, and colleagues. You must use your networks. If you have a mentor that's exceptionally well-versed, ask them. But note that not all mentors and not all colleagues know what they're talking about. Many people are giving opinions. Make sure that it's accurate. Lastly, utilize any online tools, platforms, or methods to investigate the idea further. That includes using a large language model or potentially searching on Google or potentially looking at other databases across the internet to find information. These are the methods that will help you answer the questions. Here's a few things. Someone will ask shortly, do I need to do this? You don't need to do anything, right? You choose what you want to do. Second, will I be assessed for this? No, you will not be assessed for this. Nobody's looking at your work. This is solely for the purposes of preparing you for the examination. Last one, if I do all the questions here, does that mean that I now will potentially have a greater chance of passing the paper? Probably does, because it'll help you learn better. That's why it's been given. Linda and myself had discussed and sat down this week to discuss how will we be approaching preparing you for the examination workshop. This is one of the methods that was designed now to aid you to pass the PPE exam. Sorry, not the workshop. How will we conduct the workshop to help you pass the exam? Here are the 7 steps that I mentioned to you. Commit to memory, because it's going to help you. So in the examination, you start thinking like, oh man, what is this topic about? And you're stressed and you don't even know your hand from your pen or your hand from your mouse, and you don't even know who you are anymore. That is when you say, okay, let's think this through. Which step is it from? And from that step, what are the topics associated with it? What I'm not mentioning to you, I'm not saying memorize the topics, I'm saying memorize the steps, because you can immediately figure out, oh, which topic is associated with which step. For example, when you're opening a practice, you know that quality management systems is usually associated with a practice. You know that employing staff is associated with it. Whereas on a construction site, you know that operation health and safety is a thing you should consider, the safety of a site. You know it's there in number 7, constructing a building. You know that we're not going to ask you about operational health and safety if the topic is actually about enrolling at an ALS. This helps you categorize information in your mind and removes anxieties from you. Moving through. All right. Linda, you with me, good sir? I think you're there. I think I've spoken a lot. Is it clear so far, Linda? If you were listening to this for the first time, you think it was clear?
No, it's completely clear, Akil. And I think it's just important as well that in as much as you've highlighted the resource documents on that list, candidates must obviously appreciate that within the value chain of the work that we do, there are so many other source documents. But as you've said, as you've mentioned, fundamentally, these are some of the most important ones. So, candidates mustn't make the mistake of saying, okay, this is what Akil said to us in terms of resource documents. That's all that I print out or come with, especially for the second exam. There's so many other documents that are relevant to the work that we do. I mean, for instance, JBCC.
Exactly.
We're going to be talking about the different forms of contracts in terms of what's published by Proxa and even international contracts like FIDIC. So just be aware that we cannot exhaust the number of documents that will be required for you to demonstrate your competency. Thank you very much.
100%, Linda. And to just make it even clearer to everybody on here, these documents that are mentioned here for the purposes of this brief, these are the ones that are being referred to in this brief. In the next brief, there will be other resources that are listed, which will be the source documents for that specific brief. To help you understand a little bit further of what's going on, we are listing here the hierarchy of authority. We are saying these are the things you can trust the most in descending order when it comes to preparing for the examination. However, what you can probably see here is that all of these here, let's start from here, SANS, guidelines, all of these are what you might consider to be legislative documents. It's things that is created nationally across various domains even, and across various fields. What SACAP has done is they have created methods to help you navigate these legislative documents. And these are the methods, the webinars, the guidelines, all of those things. It is meant to aid you. The next one is to help you even further are things like the professional practice ebook from Y, a cyber initiative, or from whatever else other voluntary associations might create. But the authority of information starts here. Okay? So let's continue. We are conducing, or we are conducing, we are conducting ourselves to ensure we stick on time. We have passed the 9:15 mark where I spoke to you about the way to approach this specific brief and what it's about. Next, we're going to be talking about the actual questions. There are two major contextual challenges that this brief is addressing for day one. That contextual challenge is, the two of them is challenging traditional business models. You can see on my left-hand side here, okay? Challenging the traditional business models. And the second one that you'll see here is technological adoption and application. These are topics that are going to be tested through compliance in the examination. So we're not testing you in saying what is artificial intelligence or what is BIM or what is a business. We're testing to see, can you understand these things in terms of regulatory compliance, in terms of the Architectural Professionals Act, in terms of the Code of Conduct, in terms of a number of various different things. So I don't want you to be confused that this is now suddenly a session where you need to learn computer science and go and get a degree in a degree in business. We're saying these are things everyone experiences in the built environment. How do you deal with it as a professional? Must make it exceptionally clear to everyone that's here. Let's talk about this. You can see on the imagery that's generated here, SACAP's Youth Webinar 2025 is spoken about. You'll see some Founder Institute here. You'll see a little bit about the cost of living. You'll see a little bit about an local international practice, SEOTA. You'll see a lot of information here. Let's talk about this a bit further. Linda and I will discuss this, but let's read through this together. Remember, this is opening paragraph that sets the stage for the research tasks. At SACAP's Youth Webinar 2025, the Money Matters team from Y, a Cyber Initiative, presented their findings on the state of the industry's financial health. Now, I know you can read this. I'm just reading it to you for those listening to this as a podcast in the future, right? It was found that architectural professionals generally earn below the cost of living in an urban center at every stage of their career relative to their standard of living. That means that if you have graduated, your entry-level graduation salary may not be able to cover your cost of living. That is the stage of life you're in, right? And your cost of living and your standard of living cannot be maintained. The same once you progress further, the general payments in salary as a result of the research conducted by the Money Matters team was that most graduates, most young professionals, candidates, young professionals, and as they progress, generally cannot afford their standard of living in an urban center, meaning that the urban center's cost of living is higher than the amount that they are making. That doesn't mean that they are earning a little. They could be earning relatively well, but the cost, and when we say relatively well, I mean with respect to other people in our nation and other employees, but the cost of living exceeds how much is being earned. And I think most people know this. It was also found that the majority of the industry who cite financial stability, those that are okay, are actually firm and business owners, and more specifically, one man shows or one single sole proprietors, or those with very small businesses. Those are the ones in the architectural industry which are actually surviving. And the reason for this information that we are getting through is potentially because of a depressed economy, or potentially because architectural education itself does not prepare you for business, but it does prepare you for the competence in design. And that's okay. We'll be discussing this as a problem which we all experience, which we are attempting to solve in the professional landscape. You cannot change the whole world. You cannot go and change all of academia's curriculum. You cannot go and change how people feel about the field of architecture, but you can change yourself and the way that you approach the field. Over the duration of the webinar, the Mining Matters team provided solutions as a number of guests presented their own experiences. Some of those guests include Founders Institute South Africa, which is, like, if you don't know, Y Combinator, which are startup pre-seed accelerators, or what some might call venture capitalists. They assist you at an early stage of starting up your business, and they attempt to take an equity in it at some stage. And they express how entrepreneurship is a method to solve the industry's problems. Just so you know, Founders Institute is one of the earliest backers of large billion-dollar businesses, which they call unicorns, like Udemy. They are the earliest backers of Udemy and other billion-dollar companies. So they mentioned entrepreneurship as a way to solve our industry's problems. And finally, there was also mention at Toyota, who was one of the guests that featured, that provided insight on how they lead a global remote practice, which moves away from the traditional architectural business model. You can see the topic here is challenging traditional business models. And so what you maybe should take away from this is, if we all who are graduates are looking for employment and we earn below the cost of living, perhaps we need to start looking at increasing our financial literacy and business skills so that we can start to work the field of architecture more as business run, owner led, instead of large firm dominated. It shouldn't be a place where you seek employment. And I'm not saying large firms shouldn't dominate. I'm saying you shouldn't necessarily always seek employment. But in creative fields, it's very difficult to ascertain what the value of what you're providing is, because a lot of it's subjective. You can't quantify aesthetics. You can't quantify how someone feels when their house is done. But what you can do is you can learn the business processes around which people feel things and pay money for it. And so a business education is part of what we're doing in the professional practice examination, attempting to help you move through that. Here are the sources. You should watch the professional practice webinar. You'll see that I was there with a number of people on the panel. There were maybe 12 or 13, maybe 15 people part of that team. I was just one of the people there. In that Young Professionals webinar, that was by SACAP, right? The youth webinar in 2025. You can have a look at it. And if you listen to the entire thing, you will see the segments on the Mining Matters team, you'll see the segments on Founders Institute, on Toyota, and you'll even see other exceptional architectural practices like Koromansky Architects and how they have attempted to create a South African architectural identity. These are questions about how can we challenge the traditional business model. That's what that specific webinar was about for the youth. Also, you can listen to Toyota founder Stefan Antony's interview on the Genius podcast here, where he talks about how they changed Toyota's business model from a practice that is traditional into one that is global, remote, and that focuses on the concept design stage, all the fun things that architects like to do who like to design. Some like construction, but for those who like design, Stefan talks about how he has changed and how him and the team at Toyota have moved towards attempting to create a faster paced environment by doing conceptual design, concept design architects, and that as their primary business model. They changed when there was adversity. Adversity means that there is an opportunity in disguise, and you'll see that featured a lot. Business and the best business innovation, like what we are talking about here, the field is in not a very good financial spot, but it's in these adversities that there's an opportunity that you otherwise wouldn't have had. Toyota understood that very well and took that on many stages after apartheid, when the 2008 recession occurred, and when the internet blew up. Toyota capitalized on each of these. And you can listen to that in the podcast. So, Linda, before we move on to the actual research task, it's 9:25. I've been speaking for about 15 minutes on how to approach this guide, and for about 10 minutes now on the context. Linda, you and I were talking about this, right? And we were just talking about numbers and graduates and salary and all of these things. What I'd like to know in the way that you feel about this is, Lina, you've been the chief architect for a long time at Department of Public Works. And in fact, if anyone doesn't really know what that means that's like probably on a national scale, the highest authority of architect when it comes to public infrastructure. When Linda and myself were chatting, Linda and I were discussing a number of things, and we said it's really sad to see the high unemployment rate of professionals. We also mentioned that at the time, it's very sad to see not just the high unemployment rate, but it's also very sad to see that many people have to potentially work one or two or potentially three jobs at a time to be able to make ends meet. It's very sad to know this if you are studying for a long number of years, and this is the outcome. And so what Linda and I had discussed is, how can we design a task that will aid in understanding the legislation around us, the regulation around us, but also ensuring that you are best prepared to deal with this in your own life, not just for the PPE, but for your own life. I think Linda has dropped from the call. Linda, if you're there, just tell me a hi. But if not, I'm going to give everyone about 3 minutes to read this on their own, and then we're going to talk about it. So, Linda, I think you're on there. For the next 3 minutes, I'm going to ask everyone to read this. You're welcome to screenshot it or whatever it is, but you will get this document, right? And this document that you're having a look at here will outline and provide all the resources that you need to be able to complete these tasks as well. 3 minutes, at 9:30, I will explain this research task. Okay, we gave everyone an extra few minutes to have a look and read over and get themselves together. You understand that this is supposed to finish at 11 today's session, and so we try to stay quite hard to time. I'll give everyone a few more minutes if you need to use the bathroom or get something to eat very quickly. We'll start again at 9:33.
No, it's a break now. We make a coffee. It's time for a coffee.
Akio.
Hi guys, doing good. Just want to check with Linda. You good? I can hear you. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. How are you? Sorry, man. I'm back. I got kicked out.
No, it's cool, cool. Linda, we're
Yeah.
gonna we're gonna talk through this thing together now. But Linda, I was just mentioning to the team
Mm, yeah.
here about some of the things we were chatting about even yesterday when we were discussing the way we're going to approach this. Um,
Yeah.
you shared some of your thoughts with me on the value that is not perceived in the field of architecture anymore. And my counter argument was that
Mm,
or not counter, my argument in support of what you're saying is yes, because value is very difficult to define, especially when you're a creative.
yeah. 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 Yeah.
What do you think is part of the way around it? Because you mentioned to me some solutions and how there's encroachment from other people into our domain. What's your thoughts on some of this?
Yeah. So look, Akil, I think specifically with regards to the issue of encroachment by other professions, I think it's a matter maybe of a lack of understanding, a full understanding of the competencies of each profession, where to actually draw the line, whether be it a project manager, a QS, an engineer, etc., etc. Where it gets a little bit more murky as well is that if you look at how we are trained as architects, And maybe this is not maybe fully appreciated
Yeah,
within our sector. We are
it isn't.
trained to have a more general understanding of all the other competencies. And I think this is important for the future of the current candidates, that you need to actually understand that first and foremost, you'll be thrust in situations where you are a team leader, right? Now, you will see in some of the scenario questions that myself and Akil will throw at you, that in as much as, let's say, a fire engineer has made an oversight that resulted in the breakout of a fire, there's still a certain level of liability that you must carry as an architectural professional, because you ought to have, as a team leader and as a coordinator and project manager or principal agent, you still have to exercise oversight over the entirety of the project. So in most cases, you will not be able to completely exonerate yourself from a professional liability when it comes to certain situations. And we'll talk more into detail about those aspects. So going back to your question, Akil, we were kind of talking about this jokingly, but the fact that if you look at the fees that you are being paid relative to the rest of the team, yours will be, in most cases, substantially more than everyone else. And that in itself tells you that, the proportion in terms of liability rests mainly with yourself as a project leader, principal agent / project manager, right? So it's important that you understand your role, because sometimes other professions may cross the line, and sometimes you may also cross the line. So the idea behind IDOW is not just to delineate compensation or remuneration for each discipline, but it's to understand the legal limits that each discipline has. And it's sometimes it's a very fine line, and you need to understand and locate where that fine line is. Thank you very much, Akil.
Yeah, Linda, wise words spoken, and as you all might know, Linda is talking from perspective of running multiple projects, being in the international audience. He has a prolific career. So what Linda is really pointing out to everyone here is that perhaps the way you're thinking that perhaps your role is only to draw a building or a plan, it's a little bit of a reductionist view of what you are, and it's potentially a contributing factor to why we don't earn that well, generally speaking. So in the research task, one of the ways that we thought to address this was through investigating financial stability. You'll see here candidates are encouraged to investigate the following at their firm, whether they're sole owned practice or whether they are or at a sole owned practice or at a firm that is a large firm. There are a few topics and things here. I'm not going to read each of them to you, but I'm going to discuss them and how this relates to you preparing for the examination. So the total monthly inflow required. So again, understand these are research tasks to go through. Calculate the minimum revenue needed to cover all liabilities without dipping into personal savings or credit. Okay? So how much does your firm need at minimum to survive every month? So you can sort of work out now, okay, if I get this big project for the month or for the year and I split it across these months, would it cover all of my costs? The next one is a little bit of the lull buffer. How many months of no revenue can you operate on? Do you have something in reserve that will help you when there's no money being made? Professional overheads. Now, this comes to the professional practice exam as all of it's part of the PPE, but here's something that will be more obvious to you. SACAP annual fees, voluntary association fees, professional indemnity. These are topics that you should know about, and you should understand that the reason that you pay to belong to SACAP and its register is so that you are protecting the public. Hey, that is your role, or the role rather of SACAP, to protect the public from, say, misconduct on your side. Okay? Voluntary associations. What are the purposes of voluntary associations? Why are they there? to represent and promote the field, yes, but also to ensure that we are aligned towards the best interests of the field, to make sure that there is a field to continue to go towards. Professional indemnity, what is that and what does it cover and why should you have that? These are things that are part of your topics. If I go all the way to the top here, you will see this information that's brought about in here. Voluntary associations, you see a number of things here that are related to what I'm talking about. I won't go through it here now, but these are part of your topic. If you can understand the function and what these things do and how you relate to them, like compliance and CPD and so on and so forth, what you will begin to understand is that it's not just that I need to know what this is to pass the exam. I need to know how this works so that when I have a scenario question in the exam, I can answer to the best of my ability. The next, we talk about technological tax. You can see software subscriptions, hardware, the human cost, salary, UIF. All of these things are examination questions that have come up before. Hey, what is UIF? What about income tax? When you're paying salaries every month, how does it work? What is the Basic Conditions of Employment Act? All of these things are things that have come in previous exams. What we are doing is we're saying, okay, cool. Linda and I had said, if we can give you the framework around which these documents become necessary, you not only are able to understand and prepare for the exam, but beyond the exam, you will be very capable and equipped. So if you were starting this now and you have this research, you're creating a folder in your drive, wherever it is, and you save all the research you did and all the documents that you use to come up with these answers, you'll be better off for practically applying this in real life. So when it comes to the examination, you're not trying to recall from memory just what you learned, but you recall from actual experience of doing. So here's the task specifically that's meant to help you get all this in your mind together well. The problem is the client's the problem is a client has a default. They're not going to be getting you paid in time for the value of 150,000 rand. So here's what you need to think. Based on your research on all of this that you've done here, will your practice survive the next 90 days? And if yes, if they will survive, what would you put in place to prevent its occurrence from it going into a place where you go into the red, where you are going to be bankrupt? Are you going to borrow money? Are you going to make sure you put something in place to ensure the client doesn't do this again? What is it? You know it's not going to happen. The money is not coming through. What can you do to prevent further destruction? And if your firm is not going to survive, what will you do to prevent this from completely occurring or falling down? So that's the first task. Linda, any thoughts
Yes.
on this? Linda, you want to maybe share some of your insight on how you potentially think you could have handled this
Oh,
problem?
yeah.
And guys, this is not again, not prescriptive answers. We are talking here to help you understand the question. Go for it, Linda.
Yes. Yeah, thanks, Akil. I think what Akil is getting at is going back to our points of departure to say that there are certain aspects, perhaps generations before, that were not as relevant, that we were not tested on. But in today's current climate, we really need to test workplace readiness in the full sense, right? So what we're talking about, and going back to Akil's question, the fairness of the remuneration that we're getting, is it commensurate with the efforts that we're putting in? And perhaps there might be other opinions or views that we're not being compensated enough. But the beauty of the architectural profession is that it gives you the tools to actually know how to come out of difficulties that you'll be confronted with going forward. And one of those tools is to develop a business acumen in whatever you do. What do I mean by that? So in most cases, most of us will have to come out, especially in the private sector, we'll have to come up with different modalities of actually creating solutions, not only for ourselves, but for clients and potential clients. So if you look at what, let's say, for instance, myself and Akil are doing currently, we are first and foremost architects. But over and above that, Akil is doing webinars, he's doing podcasts, he's doing all sorts of things that are related, say, to the fourth industrial revolution. Myself, again, first and foremost, an architect, but I am also a construction economist. But I can tell you now, that would not have been possible had I not studied architecture. Where this becomes important is going back directly to the question that Akil has just curated here, to say, in the absence of income revenue from your mainstream work, what other things can one do? You've got architects that qualified as architects, but specialize in doing just furniture design, for instance. Some specialize, like for instance, in Akil's case, in AI, etc., etc. So that element will need to be tested, and that talks to what I was saying, which is workplace readiness. And the thinking behind that is that, and I think Akil actually emphasized this point as we were discussing the exam, is that we're not preparing you to become employees. Those of you that want to become employees going forward, it's fine, because it's not a crime. But there's a high dimension to this, where we are preparing for you to say, once you are done with this exam, you can be able to stand on your own and be able to understand and know how to source business in a very creative way. Not only source it, but also to sustain it. And we'll go into some of those details. Thank you very much, Akil.
Linda, very well said. Sorry, I was struggling to
Yes.
unmute myself there. I want to also emphasize on what Linda had mentioned. We are looking at the architectural professional as a high dimensional person, someone that needs to know a lot of things and is capable of many things. Many of you do not have the good fortune of covering everything in your MTRs exceptionally well. Sometimes your firms don't necessarily have the infrastructure or the opportunity, or just don't support your endeavors. We are giving these tasks as well to assist those that maybe were not able to cover this during their training well, and giving them another opportunity to have guidance and mentorship, or find those who can support them in understanding this. Sitembiso, we can hear you and all of the drama. I'm going to ask that you mute yourself. Yes, yo, hectic. All right. We're going to move on. So the requirement for you there is pretty clear what is required. Nobody's assessing you on that. It's for yourself and to better aid you in preparation for the examination. The next research task on this, which I'll discuss for the next few minutes, is exploring alternate business models. Again, what you would need to do when you're looking at this is you look at this and you're like, okay, where in the 7 steps is this? Ah, cool. It's here. It's starting my own practice or passing the PPE or whatever the case is. Okay, cool. What are the topics associated with this? Oh, cool. So these are the topics associated with this. Where can I get more information? So now I'm going to study that topic through the resources that are available. I can better understand it. So now when I go to do a past paper and I answer the questions in the past paper, I'm talking from a place of research, knowledge, informed opinion. I'm not just studying an answer that came with a question. I'm coming with a whole wealth of knowledge to answer that question. So when the examiners are marking my paper, they're going to have a very tough time to give me something wrong or mark it as incorrect if I have a very well substantiated argument, because I'm coming from a place of knowledge. So Linda, this second one, we'll be talking about various types. You and I were maybe discussing this a little bit more, right? But research task 2 in exploring alternate business models, right? You can see we've got 4 here, Linda. We've got the productized service model, the architect as developer, the subscription and retainer model, the performance-based model. From these models here, I want to chat about 2 in specific, but the product one and the developer one, Linda, here's something that we maybe miss out as architects, and you give me your thoughts on this. We don't really have equity in the things we design. Is that a true statement that I'm mentioning?
No, it's very true, Akil. And I hope I'm thinking of equity in the same sense as you. You know, sometimes the projects that we want to undertake are capital intensive. So the capital outlay or the amount of money it would require to start a project is very prohibitive. And I've learned this from international architects. Sometimes you need to go above the call of duty as a service provider to a client who says to you, I've got a project that was going to cost 200 Rand, right? But I've only got 150 Rand. How do you come up with a creative model, financial model, right? And maybe I'm talking from the position of a construction economist now. How do I come up with a creative model to make up for that 50 Rand shortfall? So yes, the equity element is very important. Those of you that will be dabbling in government projects where we deal with triple Ps, which are sometimes multi-billion Rand projects, right? Currently, as public works, we have triple Ps. For those of you that don't know this acronym, is public-private partnerships, right? And that's another model that's lesser known to the private sector, that you don't have to go through the normal open tender process in order to secure work with government. There is sometimes what they call triple Ps, where you have equity partners, where you've got technical experts that partner with government. And in most instances, the government will say, we actually have a limited purse, right? So you come up with a financial model to help us execute this project as an equity, both as an equity partner, but also as a technical expert. So yeah, that element will be very important to know as well.
Well, exactly, Linda. That creativity is definitely what comes in finding other ways to finance a project. And one of the ways is also the concept of exchange. Are you just a consultant, or do you share the risk? And I guess that's the major thing. Do you share the risk in these projects that are being undertaken? When you share the risk, it means that, okay, cool, I might, in exchange for my service, take a unit in this development we are using. So now, cool, I wanted to go ahead, you wanted to go ahead. It's not just that I do things at risk or for free. As you and I were discussing yesterday, as philanthropists, right? We are doing this hopefully in the aim that both parties are going to get an income. So I'm just going to talk about these four very quickly, Linda, so that we can get the guys through and stay on time here. So we are looking at creating or exploring alternate business models for the field. The productized service model, where instead of design services, you sell a fixed price product. Okay, so there's developer-ready feasibility studies. You're mentioning a compliance audit package. But here's the thing that you should have a look at on your own, right? The question is, the inquiry is, how can standardizing your workflow into a product reduce the minimum operating expenses found earlier on? But each of these things and these models we're looking at has a critical question. The critical question is, could architectural designers, for this one, could architectural designers package their knowledge into products to be sold? If so, what kind of knowledge and to which market? And how would the various CPD categories play a role in assisting you? Look at that. That is exam level questions. Hey, do you understand CPD, continuous professional development? Do you understand how the points work? And what if you could make your knowledge into CPD point bearing units of sale? Because now we start talking about markets, because the confusion most people have is, I have one project, it has so much of value. But the market works more like this. It's, yes, there are many massive projects out there, but you need to see if there's enough demand, and demand usually goes with volume. How many sales do you make? And if you can identify a massive market where there's many sales to be made, like people who want to purchase so-called units of knowledge or feasibility studies from you or whatever the case is, if there's a large enough market, you can have this recurring many times. So how can you store your knowledge? That's a critical question to ask. The critical questions I hear are the ones that really you should engage with well, because the critical questions will help you understand the topic in a high dimension, that when you write the PP exam, you don't just give, oh, CPD is this. You give more to substantiate your answer. The next one on the architect as developer equity model, just a concept. Instead of for a fee, professional takes equity stake in a project. They come up with creative ways to reduce the risk. So the inquiry here, for example, you can research these models, the alloy model, But you can see here that how does a professional transition from a consultant to an owner in a project? And of course, over time, many people that have created buildings are also owners of them across time. And part of the issue with the field is that we create some of the largest, most valuable assets in the world because it's built on real estate, and we sort of give it all away. And architects die people without homes or pennies or many, many things. And so what we are looking at here is potentially, okay, cool. How does this change your professional liability and insurance requirements? Because that's a massive topic, right? If you become now an owner. And then should you allow your role to be only a service provider and not an equity holder? Why? Because obviously, if it was so easy for everyone to do, everyone would have done it already. We are discussing the limits and the constraints. What is possible now that wasn't possible before? Those are the two I'm focusing on, but the three that's also pretty useful here for you to engage with is the subscription retainer model. So the concept is offering architecture as a service to real estate investment trusts or property managers for a monthly fee. So you almost as though you're on a project, I design this building, but for a monthly fee, I will come here and look at your building and tell you, what is the health of it like? Is there potentially going to be a damp rising somewhere? If you pay me monthly fee, I will be the doctor for your building for the next 5 years or 10 years or 2 years or for your building's entire duration. Because many times I am the one that designed the structure. I know best how to look after it. I know the teams that will be most capable and most competent in looking after it. So here's questions. How does a monthly retainer stabilize cash flow? Compared to, okay, I only have one project or I got 3 projects and all 3 projects collapse, what do? We're talking about consistent, repetitive, predictable outcome. Here's a critical question. In which part of the field can you perceive abundance? That is, where can you see everyday recurring opportunities to create revenue? This is a pretty useful statement for you to think about, because if you can imagine where demand is, you can imagine the supply. Like, people have food every day. Very easy to imagine, but people don't construct a building every day. What is it that they want every day relating to a building? Maintenance, renovations, generally, maybe even quarterly, seasonally. There's some sort of prediction coming with that occurring. Last is the performance-based model. The one is here, if fees are pegged to project outcomes like energy savings, speed of approval, and not just to time spent. Now we start talking about things like, okay, cool. Now that we can discuss the value, what that means to you, instead of, okay, my hourly rate is 1,000 rand or 2,000 or whatever the case is. Again, we're not saying these are prescriptive. These are not the solutions. We're saying you should encourage discussion amongst it, because some people might find a solution. Like in the case of Toyota, not everybody wants to do concept design architecture, and not everybody feels that's feasible, but it definitely was feasible for Toyota. So maybe in your discussion, you might find a business model that works for you. Here's a critical question. If an architect designs a high performance building, high performance meaning energy is reduced and it's able to warm itself in the day because it's orientated well, or whatever the case is, what software could be used to simulate its energy performance? And could this possibly be an alternate revenue stream for the business? Could you now go and evaluate buildings and people would pay to say, oh, my build, like I was just complained this morning, and one of the reasons I complained this morning, I was saying it's so cold in Cape Town. If I had an energy performance audit on my building that an architect conducted, I'd know exactly where what is wrong and how I could solve it. And I could potentially pay an architect as a retainer to make sure that they solve this problem for me constantly. Or the architect I'm working with, one of the outcomes is you will get this sum of money if this building performs as well over this period of time. Now, we are suggesting, these are not final ideas, but these are things that you should consider. You will see that's mentioned here, things like environmental impact assessments and SPLUMA. Okay? These are things that have come out in the exams before. And these are questions you could see in papers. But these are ways to help you gain a deeper insight into understanding the things the examination is testing. We are now at 9:59, and we have the next question to come through, the next contextual challenge. But Linda, I'm going to stop sharing my screen very quickly. And Linda,
Yeah.
Linda, if you had questions like this to answer when you were preparing at an earlier stage of your career, do you think this could have benefited you in any way?
Yeah, no, most definitely, Akil. The thing is, our profession, our industry, there are so many hula hoops in terms of compliance. I mean, you just mentioned SPLUMA. There are certain things like, let's look at SPLUMA, for instance.
Yeah.
I never knew when I graduated that there's such a thing as a rezoning application. I never knew that there were certain things like bylaws, land use rights, and how to actually apply those fully. Some things, some elements I had an idea about, but in terms of application, I was lacking. So that is where I suppose those are some of the elements we'll be testing because, you know, during the course of the candidate's, journey, one of the things that you had to do is acquire practical experience. So during that practical experience, that year or two is supposed to cover some of those gaps. But in all honesty, I don't think it's realistic to think it would be a misnomer or it would be naive to think that, even after passing the exam, that you'll know everything there is to know about the profession. I think the important thing, Akil, is to always have a learning attitude, to understand that whatever point you are in your career, you are always on a journey towards a particular destination. Never think that you have arrived. With the experience that I have, the experience that Akil has, we still have not arrived, and hopefully we will not get to that point, because that's in itself is self deceit. You always on a journey of continuous learning. Thank you.
And that's quite comforting as well, Linda, because imagine if you arrived and you're there, then what do you do with your life? It's like, it's over. You're like, okay, cool. What must I do? Must I just retire? What must happen? And I think there's a lot of comfort in the sense of continuity. It's actually something it's a fundamental concept we miss in architecture, that buildings exist beyond just the things we do. It's not like you work with a client, it's over. There's relationships that come up. And money is also not a thing that's once off. It's supposed to continuously come in. It's not like one project, now I'm sorted. It's a pursuit of continuity that we maybe miss in architecture. But Linda,
just one more thing.
Go for it.
Just so that the candidates, when hopefully they've passed the exam.
Yes.
I was personally thrust in very deep waters at some point in my first project. I remember I was working at Melrose Arch for Osmond Lang Architects, sitting as a team leader. Here I am, this young guy, still wet behind the ears. And these guys, highly experienced engineers, QSs, etc., they throw concepts that are obviously mainstream to them and they are well versed in. And the concepts nonetheless throw me completely off. And why I'm saying this is that sometimes, even as you are being seen as a team leader, I think there's an element of humility that also needs to kick in. To say, when a word is thrown in, when a concept is thrown in that I don't understand, there's nothing wrong in saying, guys, can we just maybe pause and stop the meeting so that I can understand what this concept is, right? So what I'm saying is the level of humility, in as much as we keep harping on about the fact that you are a team leader, you are at the top of the food chain, you may deprive yourself if you don't actually have the humility to ask if you don't know, right? So that's what I just wanted to say, Akil.
Oh, I think that's an exceptionally good point you mentioned, Linda. And for everyone here that's wondering, why are these two men talking about this stuff in the exam? We've got lives to live here, people. I don't have time to waste on the PPE. Guys, we are mentioning again, and I'll start with it. Linda and myself, and this is going into the next segment now, because we are 10:05, and so we are in the next question that we're getting into. Linda and myself have insight into the examination, because we've been part of the team before that was presenting this and worked with the examiners to understand what is it that they want from us when they present. And so we have an insight onto how the mind of the examiner works, which means we are sort of aiding you in helping guess who you need to be to write this examination. And so the questions that Linda and I are discussing are the same conversations we've had with the examiners. So you can imagine Linda's talking about these concepts. If examiners, what's in their mind at the time are the problems that we are discussing, you can almost guarantee that is going to come out in the paper, especially if a building is collapsing and that's headline news. If artificial intelligence is aiding us in a way that is useful, like we're going to see now, that's going to be something in the paper potentially. Or if somebody is not registered and you can see SACAP posting on the website that there's poor conduct occurring, or that there's RPL mechanisms that are not being followed, or that there's new types of CPD out and there's new regulation, or like the Archicad consultation session that's happening. All of these things, like if these are the discussions that the examiners are having, you can guarantee that stuff will come out in the examination. Canberra Accord, different types of regulatory bodies like the Architects Registration Board. If you guys don't know, in the last exam, because the ARB, the Architects Registration Board, the SACAP in the UK, they had attempted to look at restructuring themselves and repositioning what the title of architect means, because it's the title of architect is protected, but not the function of what an architect does in the UK. And so the ARB and REBA and you'll see a whole lot and NCOB in the US. These are all regulatory bodies that are trying to restructure themselves for this time, because AI exists, because financial literacy is very poor for architects, business skills for architects completely lacks. All of them are attempting to resolve these problems, and you will see that a lot of the international crowd is discussing the same things we are discussing, and those bodies are changing. What you might not know is SACAP was talking about this long before that even happened with the rest of the world. They're almost in the view that you might see, they're a little bit behind. And so SACAP had already started doing this because they had seen the problems and started to change the papers accordingly, which is your professional body, which you should be proud of, because your professional body is attempting to prepare you for the real world, and did that even before some of the leading countries in the world. And so that brings me to the next segment. It is 10:08, and we are now going to be talking about the next segment. I'm going to share my screen with you. Guys, you still with me? Linda?
I'm with you, Akil.
Okay, I think my mouse or something is frozen here, so I'm just trying to get it through. Give me a second here. So while I'm getting that through, Zama, just want to check any admin related issues that we are experiencing.
No, Akil, no, we are fine. We are fine. It's just some of the questions, they are
Okay.
still coming. When you have time, I think you.
Okay, no, cool. I'll address it. Zama, you okay, Zama? And now this too boring for you, Zama?
No, I'm fine. It's actually interesting how you are conducting it, Akil. I'm okay with it.
Okay, cool, Zama. Zama, if you can follow this thing, who is at SACAP and you are dealing with these problems every day, and you are not too tired, I'm sure our guys should be okay.
Yeah, they should be fine. I think they are having fun, I think.
They're having fun. Lol, I like that one. You're having fun. I never heard anyone use that to describe my sessions. I once was in a lecture, Zama, just so you know, and the student was like, I can't be at peace with Akil. I just can't be at peace with this man. This was like 5 years ago or something. It was just too funny. And that was when I had just exited practice for a short while to enter academia for a bit. Anyway, so this brings us to where we're at now. Technological adoption and application. What Linda and I were talking about right now is relevance for the rest of the world. We have been, for many a time, at the forefront of relevance in architectural education and elsewise. If you look at our work, it is greatly on par with the rest of the world. In fact, some of the content we have, because universities in South Africa are excellent in many of the programs, architecture being one of them, we have a first principles approach to architecture. And so when I had conversed with doing some research that I was doing for a book that I was writing, What is Architecture, the Future of Architecture, I spoke to Andrea Jordan Kajukaro, and she was at the time a developer, software developer, and she had an architect who graduated from one of the Ivy League institutions. When we had conversations, we understood each other very well because our education prepared us in architecture very well to converse with people around the world in our field and be competent at it. And we could get to places we need to. And often the case is, if you went to a better institution somewhere else in the rest of the world. It's not the case for architecture. Our schools of architecture in South Africa are excellent. So here we are, bringing that into context because you're talking about relevance. In 2023, the South African Institute of Building Design hosted the first national AI webinar for the architecture profession in South Africa for CPD points. So it was a CPD event, but the first one was hosted by Cybert. Intending to make AI accessible to a broader audience, it covered a more accurate way to understand the new technology. Subsequently, voluntary associations have begun to advertise various workshops and webinars which encourage entry into a new way of operating an architectural business model, that is, with the use of AI. In 2024, in SACAP's youth webinar, the prior one, not the 2025 one, the 2024 one, because those are two-part webinars. The first is 2024, second is 2025. SACAP's youth webinar featured Dr. Chaba Mape's work, who is a senior lecturer at the University of Witwatersrand, which demonstrated how AI can be used as a method to investigate alternate South African architectural identities. Contrary to popular opinion in the architectural space, AI is not most valuable when applied to rendering or automation, although it can do that. This year, Anori, which is a spin-out from Google's research department, or what they call X the Moonshot Factory, where they research work in creative ways and launch it as profitable, purpose-driven businesses. They launched their AI platform to use real-time data in aid of building compliance during the concept design phase. Obviously, you can see I'm not reading word for word. I'm sort of telling you what's here. You can read this yourself. But what Anori does in specific will be discussed shortly afterwards in the research section. AI as a means to solve complex challenges in the built environment opens up the possibility of economic prosperity, sustainable building practices, and contextual design in a field struggling to support itself. Just a side note here, nobody's saying it's a solution to all our problems. We're saying that there are avenues that we have not yet looked at. And potentially, there are avenues we don't fully understand because artificial intelligence is a means to solve a problem. It might not be the solution to the problem, but might be a method to helping us solve big problems. When AI is treated as a capacity expander, designers may be able to create the tools they require to solve their own problems versus relying on someone else to do it for us. So this is the opening statements here. And I will have my rant just now. But so you can see the sources, you can watch that webinar, the very first webinar in South Africa about AI, which was done in 2022 to 2023. You will be able to see here that you can watch the video. You can watch the entire youth webinar here as well, which has the points that we're discussing. And you can also watch Google's podcast on Anori, X the Moonshot Factory. Anori, the company from X the Moonshot Factory, which discusses the spin-out. It's Google's first attempt at creating an architectural solution to problems. And in 2020, or 2021, when I had a podcast with Kim Habo Nielsen, who at that time was just left Bjarke Engels Group and was with Rambo Structural Engineers, he mentioned that at that time in 2021, when I was conducting my research in machine learning, he was stating what architects should actually be concerned about is what happens when the tech companies figure out what we do and then do it themselves. And he was like, we should figure out how to be like the tech companies before they figure out before us and take the value away. And I thought that was really good insight in light of what's happening.
Yeah.
But Linda, go for it.
No.
Share some of your
I'm
thoughts.
just I'm agreeing completely with what you're saying. I think it's a very good point. Thank you.
Yeah, I think so. And you know, Linda, here's often what I hear when anyone talks about AI, right? And I'm mentioning this specifically because I'm trying to change the way candidates answer the questions in the paper. Because previous papers, the feedback that was given was that candidates didn't have a deep understanding sufficient enough of compliance nor of AI. So because they didn't understand compliance very well, they couldn't even answer a question related to AI. Remember, the question AI is not about AI, it's about compliance. That's what people think people confuse. But Linda, many people do the following, and this is a thought just after you and I chatted last night, I was thinking about it. It's like, you know, when someone claims knowledge over a field, like I'm talking about artificial intelligence in somewhat of an authoritative manner, a lot of people think artificial intelligence in their mind is cool. They'll say, I use AI, but it can't do this. And that upsets me, man, because The
Mm,
thing
mm.
is, a better thing to have said is, I have used it. This is my experience, and this is the value I did or didn't get from it. To say that, dismiss the
Yeah.
entire thing and say there's no value and it doesn't do what a person does or whatever the case is, I think you're
Mm.
greatly misguided then, because you are reducing things. And the way that I would look at it is the following. Linda, when someone tells me I just draw pretty pictures, that's what architects do. I get offended, man. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't. How do you feel when someone tells you, all you do is draw? I don't know what you make of it, but I feel offended. You?
No, definitely, definitely. I think in as much as we need to self-educate, the public out there also needs to be educated. And sometimes in the implementation of a project, I think that must be used as an opportunity to educate the client, because in doing so, you are putting them in a position of power.
Yeah.
And they will also educate other people. Unfortunately, our profession is not as well known as the legal profession, the medical
Mm.
profession, and so on and so forth. And I suppose you could argue that's not a SACEP role, but even the VAs
Yeah.
have a big role to play
A
in that.
responsibility, actually, a
Yeah,
responsibility to
yeah,
make
their
sure that it's known.
responsibility. Yeah. Yeah, but
Mm.
the bottom line, each of us in our own little spaces must play that role of actually educating clients, because what happens in a lot of cases, Akil,
Mm.
is it's only when you have problems during the course of a project that these things become apparent, the lack of knowledge becomes apparent.
Yeah.
Where, for instance, a client will quickly Google where to lay a complaint about an architect, and they quickly run to SACAP to lay a complaint, not knowing that whatever complaint they've got does not rest within the ambit of an architect. And again, it goes back to what we were talking about: understanding of competencies, understanding of IDOW, knowing
Yeah.
how to draw the lines, because sometimes you'll be accused of wrongdoing where when it's got nothing to do with you. So what I'm saying in a nutshell is, yes, there's a lot of self-education that needs to happen, but there's also education that we need to provide to the public out there.
But exactly. Now, that's
Yeah.
what you're mentioning there, Linda, is
Mm.
exactly, and the way you express it, how I feel about artificial intelligence, because everyone
Yeah.
engages with it, everyone uses it,
Yes.
everyone has an opinion and thinks they know what they're talking about. But a better
Mm.
approach is to say, I've had experience with this. This is what it was to me, and this is what value I had. Now I can concede to that. I'm like, okay, cool. In the experience you had, I understand this is why it works and what doesn't work. But to dismiss it is a problem. And so this is what we actually sort of addressing here is, if the public doesn't understand architects and we feel some way about them not understanding the architectural profession, then that's the same sort of empathy you should show towards artificial intelligence, because it is an entire field on its own, full of richness and dynamism. For you to dismiss that it's a thing or not is what we're addressing here, because what we're actually going to talk about now is how that can change the way you practice architecture and how you can derive some sort of value and benefit from it. So, in research task 3 here, understanding AI applications and trustworthiness, candidates are required to research the following to gain a deeper understanding of AI and regulatory compliance. Look at that. Nobody's asking for an understanding of the statistics of linear regression and how that applies to creating a large language model. We're asking here, if you're going to use the thing, how is it going to impact you in terms of regulatory compliance? So here's the first one: the real-time compliance model. The concept here, integrating AI platforms like Anori, the one that's from Google that's mentioned here. You can check it. It was just released the other day. So we can, this is information that's updated. You wouldn't have found this in prior places. Integrate AI platforms that utilize real-time data to automate building compliance checks during the concept design phase. What Honori does is it shows the architect, the engineer, and the municipality all at the same time the building that's being built. So the municipality checker, the person there that checks the drawings, can see whether you're following regulation. The engineer, as we have on Autodesk Forma, or what you might call a shared common data environment, CDE. What happens is now we extend it to the public, the owner, to the municipal officer, to the engineer, the quantity surveyor, the architect, and whoever else has a stake in it. Real time, you can see How much will moving this column cost in a building? And what will the implications be to the design? And how will that affect regulatory compliance? That's what Google's Honori does. And they test running this, if I'm not mistaken, in Brazil at the moment. So the inquiry is here, okay, imagine if this is what artificial intelligence can assist us in doing, right? How could this potentially be of use in our duty of care and competency under the code of conduct? What does this mean for us when we are going to use a thing like this? What will our responsibilities be? So here we go. Here's what it's sort of saying very directly. If you had to look at a plan and manually check for SANS 10400 compliance, it would take you a long time. But what if you didn't have to do that anymore? And what if a machine does that for you? What then becomes your responsibility? And so the critical question is, why is a large language model like ChatGPT not a good idea when it comes to SANS regulatory checks? Now, I'm not giving the answer, but I'm suggesting that no model based on probability can be fully trusted. That's all you need to know from a background in statistics. It's probabilities. It's not telling you that it's correct, which means there's a probability that it will give you the wrong answer at some stage. And so you can't fully rely that it's correct. But the second question is, will the rules in the code of conduct, will they be under scrutiny? Will you be under scrutiny for not following the code of conduct? If you make a mistake in regulatory compliance as a result of using an AI system, could you blame the system? Could you blame yourself? What is actually the issue at stake here? And so here we are talking about the concept of accountability. And according to the code of conduct, should you be punished for making a mistake? And where in the code of conduct should you be punished for making a mistake if you left it to an AI model to do? These are real questions because in some offices where they are deploying it, they don't understand the limitations of the technology and they believe that that is what the technology is best utilized for automating stuff. When I must mention, automation is maybe a byproduct, is a thing that's useful, but that's not where the value of it comes. The next one here, we're going to talk about here is identity and contextual model research, the capacity expander, and then the data-driven sustainability model. We'll talk about these now very quickly, but before I move on to that, Linda, any thoughts on what we just discussed here?
I think you've said it all, Akil. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Linda. Good on you. Let's keep the time. So
Yes.
the second one here, the identity and contextual research model. The concept is utilizing AI as a method to investigate alternative architectural identities, or South African ones, just like the work of Dr. Sjaba Mape. The inquiry is, how can generative AI, which is a specific type of AI, generative AI is not for automation. How can generative AI be used to fulfill SACAP's 10 competencies? You can already see all the topics that come in the exams here. We're talking here about code of conduct. We're talking here about duty of care. We're talking about all of these things, right? And the next thing you can see that's an exam topic that comes up is 10 competencies. We're giving you the example of where incidents occur every day and how do you relate that to the 10 competencies. So you must understand the 10 competencies well so you can be able to understand how to address the problem. And this will give you context in answering the exam, because in the exam, if you don't know what's coming out, the best thing you can do is prepare to understand the subject matter that they will be talking about in specific scenarios. And so we're testing, exercising the mind here of scenarios. The inquiry is, how can generative AI be used to fulfill SACAP's 10 competencies regarding environmental relationships without falling to stylistic mimicry? For anyone that doesn't know what that means, we're saying, how can generative AI not be a copy pasting of whatever existed before, especially when it comes to environmental practices? Because we are attempting not to make things that were existing before. We're attempting to make new, better things. So there are risks, and that's why this is mentioned here. The risk is for you to discuss the ethical implications of IP in relation to the POPI Act when training AI models on local heritage and indigenous design languages. This is a controversial topic because there's a lot, and I was actually at UCT the other day giving a guest lecture on this AI and copyright. And Ryan von Rumen, who was there, who invited me to talk to his professional practice class, there were lots of differing opinions. My view and understanding is that when you are putting something for display on the internet, it's public for everyone to use. You're either doing copyright because you are intending to make money from it, and that's why you put it out there, or you are attempting to put something out there that is going to be of public benefit, and that's why you put it on the internet. And if it's of public benefit and someone benefits financially or otherwise, can you really be upset that you are not getting a share of that benefit? Because you put it out there for the betterment of society. You don't know how it was going to work, but you did so. The second point that was discussed there was relating to copyright is the models are not garbage in, garbage out. That's a false understanding of how AI works. That's how automation works. Artificial intelligence is based on probabilities and what you might call a worldview. So you put stuff into the machine, it tries to understand, like, look at these images here on my screen, right? This is an image that was produced, if you didn't know, by AI, given this paragraph that I pasted into it. The paragraph and this. The paragraph is not a prompt that's like, make this, do that. It had to attempt to create a worldview, so-called understand what I'm saying, and produce imagery to aid that. Can you see what happened? It produced something for itself to use. So the worldview that forms, it had nothing to do with, it took my data from my words. It took the data and formed what you could consider as a paradigm. We call it a paradigm. And it produced an image based on the paradigm. That's how human beings work. I don't just go and copy what someone does. I take the knowledge I have, and anyone who's design knows this. I take all of the design thinking that I had, and I produce a novel outcome from the combination of all the things I've experienced in my lifetime. But the question is, if that's the case, should you pay everyone that has influenced you? If you were influenced by the work of Frank Lloyd Wright, and that's what led to your design development, should you pay Frank Lloyd Wright for that influence? That's a question, right, that we are asking. I'm not saying that we have an answer. We're saying, is that a thing we should consider now? And so what we are discussing here is, if an AI model generates novel work, who does its output belong to? You, the data, where it came from, the person who created the data? Does it belong to the company? Does it belong to the actual machine? Should we give the machine rights and responsibilities? And how does that infringe on copyright of an architectural professional's work, if at all? There isn't an answer. We're asking you to investigate it because these are tough questions in industry every day that will potentially come out in your exam. In fact, this was in one of the previous examinations. This specific problem was discussed: copyright and copyright with AI. The last two. Felix, you want to add to that?
No. I think you're spot on. You're spot on, Akil. I think where the difficulty is as well with AI and what you're talking about in terms of intellectual property is that the difference between AI and, let's say, resources like Google at least will be able to cite and
Yeah.
that's where Google still has the power over AI. That when you try and search for any information, it will at least cite the author, because then you can test. If you can cite the author, you can actually then trace the literature of that author to test the authenticity and the integrity of that
100%.
information. Whereas with AI, and for those of you that will go on to still study masters and PhD and whatnot, that's where that differentiator and understanding comes in. It is very important because, as Akil is saying, AI can regurgitate information, but you still need to apply critical thinking because it's more difficult to test the integrity of the information that you're getting from AI than if you were going to a library or Google, for instance. So that's where I think going forward, we need to be careful, because when you make an error, right, as the author of a particular, say, piece of literature, that error can be compounded over years, and it becomes part of the body or part of the metadata that people will use going forward when they are looking for answers. So what I'm saying is we must be very careful in being over-reliant on AI than other tools that can easily be tested. Thank you, Akil.
Linda, I think
so Akil, sorry to say this.
Yeah.
So, candidates might also be tempted during the exam itself that if they get stuck, they may want to jump to AI, but bear in mind that the exams will be moderated. So, these things will be checked. So if you willy-nilly, accept an answer if you're relying on AI, that's something you must be careful of, because some of the questions will be contextualized to South African law and the South African context, which AI may not be fully conversant with. So just be careful that you're not over reliant on AI. Whilst Akil has pointed out the importance, there's also a part of an aspect of uh, being circumspect when you're using that as a tool. Thank you, Akil.
Thanks, Dean. And I think that's of course what it means to be a professional. You do things within reason. Like if you, of course, are completely outsourcing accountability to a machine, that is an
Yeah.
unreasonable thing to do, right? Anyone with a sound mind knows that that is not how you should operate or perform as a professional. But just further to that, Felix, Linda is 100% correct, because Linda mentioned the issue is lack of credibility. Credibility and crediting someone and referencing means we can locate origins of truth. And that's what we are really important in. Where can I find out more? Because if you break the train of truth, you're unable to explore ideas and topics further. So maybe copyright and whatever it is in artificial intelligence is not even really about the financial aspect. It's really about sources of truth. Because once you skew truth in a society, you completely go astray. Anyway, I'm mentioning these things because these are difficult conversations that are actually happening. And this was in, I think, the 2024 paper, this specific thing we're talking about, if I'm not mistaken. But let's move on to the last two. It is now 10:32. We'll conclude in the next 15 minutes so that we'll have a little bit of time for questions and addressing problems. But let's continue. At number 3, we're talking about the capacity expander business model. And for anyone who just joined late, yes, you will get all of this. We are sharing this with you now. This is not seen anywhere else before. It's not available anywhere else. Someone will send this through to you to work on. The capacity expander business model. Transitioning from a consumer of third-party software to a creator of tools by using AI to build bespoke internal workflows for specific architectural problems. That's what we're talking about. The inquiry is if AI allows us more practice to perform the work of a large firm, how should the professional fee scale be adjusted to reflect value-based output rather than time-based? Now, what I'm mentioning here, look, you have to understand the professional fee guideline to be able to answer this question. You can't go and just say, oh, our fees are going to change based on this, blah, blah, blah. You must know what the guideline is, what it says. What is ArchiCAD, the consultation session coming up with SACAD? What is it about? These are the things that you have to discuss and understand. You can't answer this question without understanding the legislation behind it. That's part of the preparation for the PPE. If you can understand this, you know how to respond to questions you've never seen before. So the critical question here, there's two, right? Should architectural designers be encouraged to create their own software applications to help them solve their own problems, which AI allows you to do now? Or should they remain in their traditional roles and leave it to software developers to create the software they use? Because you might say, yeah, just leave it to them. They know what they're doing. I don't give the quantity surveyor the right to design my household. That's my responsibility. I'm the one who knows design. We're not saying it's right or wrong. We're asking, what do you think, right? What do you think should happen? And so that leads to the second critical question. Should we move away from our current fee scales, project-based and time-based, to look at other alternatives? What are the current fee guidelines for SACAP and how can they incorporate AI as a service? Something to think about, because if you look at it, BIM can be considered a service and project management can be considered a service and environmental impact assessments that you do can be considered a service, or feasibility reports can be considered a service. So what else can we do? Okay? So now you're critically engaging with the material. You're like, oh, cool, the fee guideline is cool, but it doesn't help me with this. How can I build on that? Hey, what if I could implement this into my business? Just a story very quickly. I run the Institute of Building Design, and I'm specifically responsible for managing the machine learning faculty for the built environment, AI in the built environment. And one of the things I do with professionals, and we just concluded our first cohort, maybe some of you who are here sitting in the audience are one of them. We attempted to teach machine learning skills, not so that you become a machine learning engineer, but so that you can have a more accurate view of artificial intelligence and see the use cases instead of AI for rendering, which it doesn't render, guys. It's just a mishmash of pictures. That's not how it works. It's not a rendering engine, right? So how can you use it to solve some of the most pressing problems at your firm. That's what we do at the Institute of Building Design, right? So there's about 12 in this cohort, and they all are professionals and or candidates and professionals, people that are not studying, not students. And you bring the problems in that you are experiencing at your firm or wherever you're at, and we use artificial intelligence to think it through, to look at other tools that are available. We're not saying AI is a tool here, we're saying it's a technology or a method to solve problems, because tools are repeatable, predictable. A tool you can rely on. You can't rely on AI. And the last thing is, okay, cool. The last point here is bring in your meaningful problems, and we'll potentially create a form of artificial intelligence systems to aid in solving it. Because maybe your problem doesn't need AI at all, and that's part of what we do. Maybe what your problem is, it just helps you to think. AI can definitely add value to your thought process, give you thoughts you otherwise would not have had from a perspective, say a financial advisor or someone that is a business analyst. Hey, cognitive capacity expansion. That's what we're thinking about, right? Anyway, I'm mentioning that to you because where we're doing that, the amount of creativity where people created their own software to manage risk at their firm, or their own software to figure out, should I build on this plot of land? Is it feasible? Or their own software to create a database in their firms of where they store things. These are useful things, you know. This is not, what does AI do for the design process? This is perhaps, in my argument, the way that I would expect thinking people to use it, right? We are the intelligent ones, not the machine. It's obviously not intelligent, just like our smartphone is not smart. Artificial intelligence is not intelligent. You know, it's a method of statistics. Anyway, Felix, in fact, when you have some time, I will invite you to see some of the work that we are doing at the Institute. It's fantastic stuff. You must check it out.
Yeah, no, definitely. I would appreciate that.
So the last thing here for everyone here for the last 7 minutes, the data-driven sustainability model. Now, when people talk about sustainability, they assume green. We're not talking about green. We're talking about, can a building survive? Can the firm survive? Can things survive beyond tomorrow, right? Using artificial intelligence to solve complex built environment challenges, such as optimizing energy performance or calculating material loss in real time. That's the idea. Here's where you can see highlighted bold. We are talking about SANS now, and AI in relation to SANS. In the context of SANS 10400XA, how does AI-driven performance modeling improve the speed and accuracy of compliance compared to traditional rational designs? Can we potentially use AI to aid us, not do for us, aid us in being able to make better decisions on energy performance? Because it provides scenarios and iterations for us to decide upon. Don't get confused with making it do things for you. It's not for that. It's to add to the value of thought. Yes, it could potentially help you write a software, but try to make it write the same software twice. That's not how a large language model works. It doesn't do the same thing twice. Anyway, critical question for you. If an architectural firm could simulate the lifespan of a building through the use of AI, how would that amend our current SANS 10400XA regulations, and what would the consequences be? Can you see we're talking about SANS? You must know, what is SANS 10400XA? How does it apply to us? I've used this in my firm, whatever. How could this help me in my process? Can you see? It's a greater understanding, but we're just using the word AI to discuss SANS 10400. It's not about AI. It's about what more can SANS 10400 be in our current situations. And these questions 4 here, which talk about understanding AI applications and trustworthiness. This is the last segment here, which talks about contextual adoption and application. We're trying to ensure that everyone in the South African industry is able to compete on an international basis, and not just compete, but pioneer ahead when it comes to challenging traditional business models, creating a new type of architecture or architectural firm, and creating more useful applications for technology. All of these are rooted in questions that either have come out before in previous PPE papers, or based on what Linda and myself have experienced in working with the PPE teams, understood this is where they are trying to take the exam towards. We understand the frameworks, we understand the topics, we are helping you explore them, because this is the expectation of examiners, that you fully understand the topics we are talking about, or at least to the best of your ability. You can see the things that we are referring to, reference and links. The SACA PPE webinar that Linda, myself, Yasmin, Nondumiso, Louis, the team of us that were briefed on the 4-part webinar series on 2024-2025. This is the comprehensive 4-part series that we created to be the foundation on which these other, like this brief, is built, and other preparatory workshops are going ahead. This is us lecturing. Today, you didn't see myself and Linda lecturing. We were having a conversation about what the exam could potentially be like for you based on our insight and knowledge. This is lectures about the exam, which can help store things in your memory and help you understand concepts you didn't understand. It's 4 parts. There's a paper 1 and 2, which are covered in 2024, and then paper part 3 and part 4, which are covered in 2025. They are continuations. It's like if you watch the Harry Potter sagas, or that's 8 movies, or the Twilight sagas, that's 4 movies, or whatever comes in 4s, right? Whatever film series comes, or whatever it is, it's a 4-part series to watch all together. But then SACAP presents webinars about fee calculation and RPL and CPD and the young professionals all the time. You will be able to find other places where I reference information in this document from. It's all provided by SACAP. You can see the ecosystem of resources is existing within SACAP here. There are others, but we're starting you off on accurate places. Just to solidify something I mentioned earlier, we're talking about authenticity and hierarchy of information. We are starting here because this gives direction to the examination. But if you attend Lizelle Jackson's PPE preparation workshop, or PIA's preparation workshop, or GIFA, all of them are useful and all of them are helpful. They add to this experience, but they are secondary. And yes, some workshops might be better than others. But how do you really judge what is coming out in the workshops? You judge whether what is coming out in the workshops is aligned to what is inside SACAP's study guide. And also, you judge it by having a look at the credibility of the topics presented by a specific person, or the credibility of the person that's talking about it. For example, Linda and myself here, the reason we can talk about these specific topics is because our backgrounds are in these things, the architectural field, but when it comes to construction economics on Linda's side, and when it comes to my side, the use of applications of technology, specifically deep learning and artificial intelligence, these are things we know about. We have also been part of the PPE team, the examining team before. That means there's a level of authority in terms of the knowledge being shared. We're not sharing opinions just. We're sharing things we know about. We're also sharing things based on the understanding of where the PPE comes from, because we've been part of the team that saw the vision. That's very different from you going to your mentor and your mentor telling you, the PPE is not a big deal. I know the field of architecture. I know better than them. I have 50 years experience. Linda only has 30. Akil only has 15. I know more than them. So don't listen to what they're saying. Just do what I'm saying. Can you see the orders of hierarchy here? Your mentor did not attempt to help you pass the exam by doing that. They are doing a disservice to you because they weren't in the conversations we are having here now. By the way, be good to your mentors. They are good people. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And that entire document, I'll share and review one more time. But Linda, in the next few minutes, can you just give me maybe a recap and a summary of what you want candidates to do from this guide we've put together? Because this is just for this week. Next week, we're going to do something slightly different, or rather build onto this. What is your expectation of them?
Yeah. So thank you very much, Akil. So I think most importantly, what you've done and what I've assisted with today is to at least set out the framework for the exam, right? So what we discussed with Akil is that, as he said, he will give you a scenario. We will give you a scenario question that can help you to understand and actually apply whatever concepts we've been talking about today. So obviously you've seen that today's presentation has been mainly one-sided, where we are trying to help you to position your mind in terms of what to expect. But with next week's presentation, what we're hoping to achieve is to make it more interactive, to make it more specific, where we then deal with specific scenarios and questions so that you're able to better apply your mind in terms of answering the questions in the paper. So I think the thing to appreciate is that you must obviously understand that we've come full circle. I think you guys shouldn't be intimidated perhaps by the presentation that you've listened to today. You must actually appreciate that you've developed experience and competencies at this stage, because you're not qualifying to write the exam, the PPE exam. It's not a fluke, right? You've had to demonstrate your ability to, number one, integrate all your competencies and areas of learning. You've developed an ability to be agile and creative and proactive in the way you actually approach projects and the business as a whole. I think what's also important as well is that, in as much as there will also be an open book exam, where you might have to, source certain literature and information, probably about 50% of what you're going to be asked is now common sense for someone at your level. A lot of the things that we also tried to integrate in the previous papers is the fact that SACAP had to undergo an exercise where they look at the nature and type of complaints that usually come to them from clients, because that in its own is a sign of what deficiencies actually exist within the current regime of architects. And therefore, the learning that we convey to you needs to start addressing some of those aspects. So with testing, obviously, administrative requirements, your technical ability in terms of your technical documentation. You're not going to have CAD or necessarily drawing in front of you, but how that then that work feeds into the value chain. Achilles mentioned Spluma, EIA, and those kinds of things, the implementation thereof, right? So it's really a comprehensive test of your workplace readiness. And also, again, to emphasize your ability to lead teams with confidence is what's going to be tested. So next week's session, we will go drill down to specifics, and we'll be able to interact where you can ask questions. We can try and answer those questions and so on and so forth. But I think with the resources that Akil has shown you, really take advantage of these, because we can't possibly cover everything with these sessions. Thank you very much, Akil.
Thank you very much, Linda. Appreciate it a lot. I'm going to also conclude on the session now on a few things, some notes that I will address. Linda has mentioned very well that irrespective of wherever it is, whether you've run a firm for 30 years or 10 or 5, we are in different circumstances. This is aimed at attempting to help you prepare for those circumstances. There are patterns that have occurred in history. It's the same patterns, but under very different circumstances. It's important to understand which patterns fit with which circumstances. I'm going to just address some things that we see inside the chat. The why ebook is something that's being mentioned in the links for all the resources available, like that I've mentioned in this presentation. It'll be sent with via Zama. The next thing was, will the recording be made available? I mentioned here about the recording available. The recording and its availability is dependent on whether this recording afterwards converts correctly, because sometimes you'll see that we have the May 2024 PPE webinars and then 2025, but we had an exam in between that. The recording was corrupted for one of them, and so we lost some of the work. So that's why you'll see that they are a whole year apart. So we're hoping that it works out, but otherwise you will get all the content, the documentation. The last one is there was a talk about customization chat and personalization in ChatGPT. Just so you guys know, that's not how the models work. You can tell it to tell you the truth. It is optimized to produce outcomes, irrespective of whether you say it's the truth or not. It's not a thing that understands. Its mechanisms are different. So I'm sort of just saying, even if you had the best large language model, in its architectural design, it's not meant to tell you the truth. It's meant to produce an outcome. So I'm just helping correct some thoughts there. The next one is, will we work through the answers next week? As Linda mentioned, there's no answers to say per se for it that are right or wrong. The aim of the activities is to help you understand the context and all of the documentation. What we'll discuss is, were you using more or less the documentation that you should to answer these questions? We're not going through the answers because the answers, these are complex questions. We can't tell you if it's right or wrong. And if it comes out in the examination, at least you'll have the tools mentally to deal with them. This is a way to help you prepare. So we'll discuss some questions and add more next week as well. But it's a discussion, nothing prescriptive, nothing obligatory in the way it's followed. And that was a question from Tana. So we had Ross and Tana. Then paper 2, are we no longer allowed to have? Zama will respond to those kind of questions, open book exam questions. Is you allowed to bring? Yes, he is answering that. Cool. I think we've answered most of the questions that are here. Zama, you want to maybe take over from here and address any other points I might have missed?
Thank you, Akil. I think you guys have mentioned most of the things, but just to add to the candidates, they should just go and read more of the materials there, like on the rules of the PPE. I know we have an updated copy which is uploaded on the website, and I did share the link to those materials when I was sharing the link to the webinar. So the candidates can go through them just to understand what is allowed, what is not allowed, like in paper 2, because most of the questions I see they are from the candidates. They want to know about whether they should bring some of these materials that you are mentioning, which
Okay.
are part of the SACAP study materials, like the code of conduct, and the ones which you've also highlighted. Those ones they can bring printed copies of them, and when preparing, one will make maybe notes on the side of that material is fine. On paper 2, they can bring them with the notes written or prepared on that material. But what they should not bring on paper 2 or on that open book is extra additional notes. Maybe from a side, you prepare them on an extra document or extra notebook. Those ones are not allowed. If you are going to make notes, make sure you are making them on maybe you are summarizing some of the things on the study materials that you can do, but additional notes from extra documents not allowed.
Cool.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Aki.
Thanks, Zama. I'm just going to add there. Someone mentioned as well a question about the SANS mistake in the guide. Um, you should always follow the most recent information that is supplied by the whether it stands for national building regulations. You should always follow the most relevant one. Thanks for bringing it to our attention. We'll inquire. Zama will take it up with the parties related to that guide. And just so you know, guys, in that guide, what's been updated are the links. In the links, you'll see it takes you to different places for some of the topics that are there in the SACAP PPE Guideline 2026. Thanks, Zama. Back to you.
Okay, thank you, Akil. Just to add, because I see some of the questions, like one is asking if they can bring PDF documents or on a tablet. No, that is not allowed. All the documents that you are allowed to bring, they must be printed documents. The only gadget you are going to use is your computer or your laptop, where you will access the ExamNet link, where you'll be writing the exam, and then you calculate. And then for the cameras, because there's the one of the in the rules, it will say bring two cameras. Just to be clear on that, by two cameras we mean the first one is the one on your laptop, which will be off. So that one you can count it out. And then the other camera is the camera, I'm calling it a monitoring camera. The one that you is going to monitor the space. You will going to put it either on your left or the right side of your desk. So it captures the view of your computer, the desk, and yourself while writing the exam. Yeah, I think that's more about it from my side. But like Akil is going to share this material he was using for the presentation and some of the documents which I will also share with the candidates after this session. Yeah, I think that's about it from my side. And then the link, I think I will share it with you because now we don't have the exact number of all the people who are going to write. I'm still going to go through all the application. And once we've finalized all the candidates or registered people who are going to write, that's when I will going to share that the link for the monitoring camera. You can use your phone also um, as the second camera, the monitoring one, to put so it captures your space. Because some of us, I know we don't have like other maybe camera, your web cameras. So your phone, you can make use of it. It's fine. Thank you.
Thanks, Sama. I'm just going to address one or two more questions. Someone mentioned, do we have to write both the papers? No. What I mentioned is my presentation is going to cover both the papers today and next week. So there's some topics here that are from paper two that we'll cover today and some from paper one, and the same next week will be done. But you write what you need to write. It's not that you have to write both papers if you're a drafts person. If you're a
Yeah,
drafts
I
person,
think,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
go, Linda.
I think just to add to that, Akil, because
Yeah.
this might create confusion as to who's eligible to write paper one and paper two.
Mm.
Just check on the study guide because it does specify who's entitled to write which paper. For instance, those wanting to register as professional drafts persons, um, they can only write paper one, and then you will see then it will state who is eligible to write paper two. So just go through that study guide to help you because it does cover those aspects as well. But having said that, if you want to qualify, let's say for instance, as a PR arc and you only want to write paper one and not paper two, that's obviously entirely your prerogative. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Yeah, I think as Linda was mentioning, it's very important to check up what you're qualified to write. You ask Zama about that, and obviously he will have a look at it through. Thanks for adding that, Linda. I think the rest of the questions are more administratively related. If you do read this guides that SACAP has issued, it tells you in quite a bit of detail what you can and cannot do, what you're allowed to bring in, what you're not allowed to bring in. Any of those we won't be covering now. I think you can send an email through to Zama for those. These are specifically related to the PPE questions for today. Perhaps next week, if you still have the same problems, bring it through. And after you've read the guidelines, which say what you can and cannot do, and it still doesn't answer your question, then ask Zama next week. Otherwise, Zama, I would like to conclude today's session. Linda, thank you very much for being such a fantastic guest with me. We both actually panelists. Panelists, thank you for making time, and thanks to everyone for joining as well. I wish you all the best in attempting to do these going forward. We'll see you next week. And Linda, anything you want to hand over with before we give back to Zama? It is 59 now.
Yeah, no, Akil, I just want to also appreciate the presentation that you've put together today. I think you've encapsulated it very nicely, and I want to appreciate also the candidates that have joined, and we definitely wish you all of the best with your careers going forward. Thank you very much.
Well said, Linda. Zama, back to you to close out the session. And I think next week's time, Zama, you'll also mention it to the candidates. Thanks.
Okay, no, thank you, Akil, and thank you to everyone for attending the webinar. I just saw one question there. I think one was asking when are they going to receive the invoice? Okay, I know for some of the candidates, they haven't yet received their invoices, but I will be processing because I've done all of the applications which I've received thus far. And then from Monday, I'll be sending them through to finance. So please note that you will be getting your invoices from next week. Let's say from Tuesday up until Friday, because you have until 30 of April to pay the fee to write the PPE. But yes, you will be getting those invoices, and an extension will also be given for paying. The fact that you've already applied and then you are eligible to write, you will be given that chance to write. Don't be scared saying, oh, you will miss the dates and everything. We will try by all means to accommodate everyone to make sure that everyone is given a chance to write. Until we meet again next week. And then, like Akil said, if you have any questions that you would like to for me maybe to assist you with any clarities, any guidelines you need, please send me an email and then I will be attending to them. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you to all the candidates who've attended. Yeah, we can close this session. We'll meet again next week.
Danko.